to order, or the roll call.
Rosanna Glenn?
Here.
Shannon Hughes Brown?
Here.
Matt Blanchett?
Here.
Ken Singleton?
Here.
Ken Jackson?
Here.
Blaze Messenger?
Here.
John Post?
Here.
Jessica Lamb? Here. Heather Jacobs? Here. Dr. Macri? Here. Missing John? Here. Jack Bucket?
Here.
Joe Costa?
Here.
Joe Culata?
Here.
Mike Berger?
He's here.
Oh, that's what I say, I thought I saw him. Yep.
He's over there.
Selena Kelleher? Alan Schumer?
Here.
Paula Luna? Here. Brian Grant?
Here.
Eric? And I apologize if I messed up your last name.
Don't worry.
How would you spell it?
Gabriel.
Gabrielle?
Yep.
Okay. And you get a gentleman?
Yes, my first name is
Okay, thank you. Approval of agenda. Any discussion on agenda items? Anyone want to make any changes? If not, I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Ken. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ken. All in favor of the agenda, please say aye. All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Approval of minutes from the February 1st meeting. Any comments on the minutes? Any changes?
I just had one comment, under the Perkins Eastman update report, in the middle of that. So that's section 9. The first main paragraph, I don't know, 6th line down that starts with the SD middle school building area is 87,788 square feet. I just want to make sure that would have been the adjusted area, right? Because like what was in the SD, we said was we were slightly over. We had to adjust that down. Is that? Oh, maybe
That's just for the middle school, right? 87,788.
Or was that just for the middle school?
That's just
yeah.
the middle school area, right?
Yeah, that's just for the middle school itself.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're comparing it.
And that's gross square footage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I thought we were saying because it starts by saying we were slightly over the target gross exterior square footage.
I think they were supposed to be 87,479, and they were coming in at 87,788.
Oh, by just 300. Yeah.
Right, 300 square
Correct.
feet.
Okay. Then that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? If not, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Ken. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Anyone abstaining? Motion passes. Okay. Public comments? Any submittals? All right. I spelled introductions wrong. Okay, sorry about that. So we officially, almost pretty much officially, have Newfield on board. I think, are we Newfield? Yes, thank you. So I figured this would be a good point. We're almost a year into this project, and we're getting a lot more followers in the community, a lot more ears perked up to what we're doing. So I think this would be a really good opportunity for us to go through our introductions again, both for our new partners as well as for the community who may be listening in, who are wondering who the heck is on this building committee. So if we can start with the building committee, we'll go around the table, and then I'm going to ask that our partners reintroduce yourselves again. If you don't have a microphone, yeah, you can use, or sit right next to, just take a seat at the table, please. Thank you. So John, let's start with you.
All right, my name is John Post. I'm a lifelong resident of Cromwell. I have 4 kids, 3 of which graduated. 1 is currently in the middle school now. I'm a lead carpenter for a district school system, and that's pretty much it, really. I've had kids, and there's a funny stat I like to tell. When it's all said and done, I will have had kids in the Cromwell school system for consecutive 31 years. So I have a vested interest in this.
Thanks, John. Ken?
This is my third Cromwell Building Committee. I was on the vice chair of the high school and chair of the WIZ project. Retired facilities director, about 35 years in public education. Doing the retirement thing now, raising my grandkids, and I got a couple coming up the pike, and hopefully he'll have a nice middle school to go to.
Excellent.
Hi, I'm Ken Cleveland. I've been living in Cromwell since 2006. I'm a licensed Connecticut architect. I have some experience in school construction, early school construction. Now it's mostly private entities, but here to help.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Shannon Hughes Brown. My pronouns are she, her. I've been a Cromwell resident for 15 years. I'm a communications professional, and I've worked in various industries from higher ed to aerospace to energy. I have 2 kids in the Cromwell Public Schools, one in 3rd grade and one in 6th grade.
Thank you. Rosanna Glenn, I'm the chair for this building committee. I've been a resident of Cromwell since 2006, so approaching 17 years at the end of this year. I've been a project engineer for 22 years, working basically with RTX, Raytheon Technologies, in various roles. I have a bunch of certifications. These days I'm really into Agile, so I don't know if you guys are doing Agile, but it's really great. I highly recommend it. And I have 3 kids currently in the school system, none of which will benefit from this school. So I'm on this committee for just the pure joy of it, for fun. This is my hobby. Yeah. Matt.
Yeah, I'm Matt Blanchett. I've been in Cromwell for 13 years. I'm an actuary by trade, work in annuities and retirement plan pricing, product development. But I have 2 kids. They're currently in 3rd grade and kindergarten, so at least one, if not both, should enjoy the new middle school. But I'm also on the town's Board of Finance.
I'm Blaze Messenger. This is my 19th year teaching in Cromwell Public Schools. I spent several years at WIS, and I've spent many years here at the middle school. And I have 2 children who are proud products of that said school system.
Right, hi, my name is Jessica Lamb. My pronouns are she, her. I've been living in Cromwell for about 19 years now. I have 3 kids in the Cromwell public school system, 3rd grade, so hopefully at least one will go there, and then 6th and 8th grade as well. I work in a supply chain professional at a large aerospace company that is local. And I guess that's it for me.
I'm Heather Jacobs. I work in hospital finance here in Connecticut, and I have a 3rd grader and a 6th grader here in the Cromwell schools.
All right, and then if we can start with you. I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
That's okay. Good evening. Some of you I remember from the interview. I'm Brian Grant, one of the partners at Newfield. Been here 22 plus years, right out of college. Worked primarily all just public school projects, so very familiar with the process. We've done a number of jobs with Arcadis. We've known Jack for quite a while. We've done a couple jobs with Perkins over the years as well with this actual team. We're working on a few with CES right now as well, so we're excited to be part of it. We're glad the contract's now signed and we're moving forward, so we're here to help any way we can. I live up in Barkhamsted. Our office is in Hartford. I got 2 daughters, 10 and 14. We're active soccer players, skiers, everything, so very busy. Unfortunately with this job, there's a lot of night meetings, so they understand it, but it's good. So again, thank you, and we're looking forward to getting started.
Thank you, and welcome.
Jack Butkus, project manager with Arcadis, and happy to be part of the team.
Jack.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Costa. I'm a principal and architect with Perkins Eastman. We're coming up to my 33rd decade of doing public schools, and I think this is going to be one of the best ones I've ever done.
That's the spirit.
I'm Joe Collada. I'm the project manager with Perkins Eastman. I've been doing schools for slightly less than Joe, but looking forward to getting this project up out of the ground.
And I'm Mike Berger, design architect with Perkins Eastman. I've been doing this for almost 22 years. remember Ken from back in school. He's a couple years older, but we go back quite a ways. So I was happy to be helping the town out with this project.
Excellent.
My name is Eric Gebre, and I'm with CES, which is Consulting Engineering Services. So we're designing the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection systems for this school. I've been with CES for 4 years now, but about 17, coming on 18 years in the industry. Our office is just down the street in Middletown, really on the Cromwell border. Public schools is what we specialize in, so I am the project manager for CES and a mechanical engineer by trade.
Thank you. And did you want to introduce yourself back there? Join the party.
Good evening. My name is Vaini Murillo. I'm also with CES. I work with Eric Gabriel closely. I'm an electrical engineer, and I'm excited to be part of the team and happy to be here and hear about the project, which is very exciting for all of us.
Thank you.
I live local. I live in Middletown, not far
Nice.
away. So
Awesome.
I'm happy to be nearby.
So he doesn't hear how late the meeting
You just hop, skip, and jump away.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank everyone for taking the time to do that. I really appreciate it. All right. My update. Okay, it's kind of a long one. All right. So a lot has been going on since our last meeting. The obvious issue at hand is the current cost estimates. No surprise there. We went to a special town meeting last Wednesday to discuss the budget, what's driving it, and what we're trying to do about it. There was some surprising information that came up from the town during that meeting, and perhaps some misleading information that I'm not sure I was able to clarify before that meeting ended. So I do want to take an opportunity to do that now. So the following information really is more for the benefit of our community than it is for the building committee, because you're all already pretty versed in what I'm about to say. But I do think it's important that we repeat it for the community because it does help prevent misinformation and rumors from spreading, which happens to be like a never-ending plague on this committee. So here we go. If you did attend the special meeting or listened in, you would have been made aware that the town manager had a meeting with the OSCGR director, Doug Rogers, before the special town meeting. We do have to be careful about terminology and expectations when it comes to state grant submissions. If you start intermingling terms and focus on just current status, you can paint a picture that is really different from reality. The day after the special town meeting, last Thursday morning, we had a pre-scheduled meeting with OSCGR to provide an update on the project. Doug was kind enough to dial into that meeting, kind of surprised us to inform us that he had the meeting the day before with the town manager Salvatore and finance director DeVoe. I don't think he realized that we had a town council meeting the night before and that we were already aware that meeting had taken place. But he did want to reiterate his conversation with them and make sure we were all aligned on the messaging. So this is pretty much the gist of what he said. He said basically if nothing else were presented to the OSCGR office in terms of change in scope or cost, the project would have to stay within the boundaries approved at grant submittal, both in terms of cost and scope. When we talk about scope, we also have to be really specific as to what that means. Scope is defined by our educational specifications, or ed specs for short. There's no other document that defines scope. It's all within the ed spec. So when we talk about scope, what's in it, scope, out of scope, it's really what's in the ed spec. That defines our scope. Doug also mentioned that it was way too early to really worry about costs. You really can't do anything until we get bids in and know what we're working with. Even then, worst case, if the cost is high or still higher than what we're baselined on our budget, the state is going to help us out. They realize that this is an issue being faced by almost every other project at a similar timeline as ours across the state. So we're not alone here. This is not like unique to Cromwell. It's not Cromwell screwing up something. This is just a common dilemma that every other school is facing right now. So at the special town meeting, the town council voted to table any decision until the next estimate, which should be due in April. This is a pretty wise choice because we're only about 30% design completion. There's still so many decisions to make and design options to consider to bring that cost down even further. And to reiterate the obvious, the building committee is committed to bringing down costs as much as possible to further decrease that gap to the baseline budget. So our intent is not just to sit where we are and, do nothing about it. We are continuously, aggressively looking at options to reduce our costs while still maintaining that scope, right? The intent of the ed spec and providing a building to Cromwell that has value and meets the needs of our community and our children. So, as we have on the agenda, I do want to go over our team values again. We do have new partners, and these values are important not only to the building committee, but to our partners as well. So I'm just going to read through them and just put a little color to some of them so we all understand what's going on here. The first one is that we work towards a shared purpose, right? Our shared purpose is to build a new middle school for our children in Cromwell, a middle school that meets a STEAM curriculum, that meets the ed specs, that is within that scope that we've defined. The next one's probably one of the most important, and that's that we're transparent and maintain open and honest communication. This is critical, not just for the building committee, but also our partners. It is imperative that you're all honest and open with us, even if we don't want to hear it. I'm sure there's going to be bad news along the way that's going to make us cringe, but we need to hear it. And not only do we need to hear it, we need to understand it. And we rely on all of you to make sure that we do understand it, right? So don't feel like, you're talking down to us or that you're like, pretend we know nothing at all and just make sure that we understand what's going on so that if you do make a design decision that increases costs, that we truly understand why it's required, what's driving it, what the risk is by not doing it is most important, right? So we need to have that open communication. As we look into the design, and you may have options in there now that we are not aware of that may be driving cost up, and we don't know because we don't know. This is like, if you've heard our introductions, none of us said that we're experts at building schools, obviously. So we're really looking for you to tell us, hey, we have these options in the building that are driving your cost up. We think it's going to be really nice to have. The students would really love it, blah, blah, blah. But tell us that it's an option and tell us that it's a nice to have, not a must have. And let us decide whether or not we want to keep it in there. So we need to have the discussions kind of driving down that path. So transparency is really important. I expect transparency as well from the town. I think we as a building committee have been extremely transparent. Everything's out there. If you go on YouTube, every single video is on there of all of our discussions. The only, I would say the only videos that are not on there are anything that we go into executive session for, but that's purely due to legal reasons and just common sense. That's usually when we go in bidding and talking about different vendors and that type of stuff. But everything else is on YouTube. Our communications subcommittee has done a remarkable job putting all of our minutes and all of our presentations and everything on our website. So everything's out there. There's no hiding anything. You can ask me for any piece of document. I will give it to you. You want the boring reports? I will send you the boring reports. We're not hiding anything, and we need to maintain that. And I think it's really important because we need to continue building the trust with our community, as well as building trust with our town and the town council and our town officials, who I think that trust is broken for whatever reason. But I don't think it's anything that we've done directly. I think it's just whatever experience they may have had with prior groups or whatnot. I don't know. But we can do our part to help build that trust, and we continue doing what we've been doing. Acting with integrity, do what we say and say what we do. That goes without saying. I think we're doing that very well as it is. Engaged in community and valuing all members' feedback. So, Facebook can be evil and sometimes it can be great. So, but any feedback from the community is good feedback. Even if it's stuff that we don't want to hear or disagree with, I value all community feedback. So there's going to be a lot of dissent, a lot of people just really angry or upset about what they're hearing in the media or what they're hearing at the town council, and that's fine. We want to hear their opinions. We want to acknowledge it and validate what they're thinking, what they're feeling, but also make sure that we're providing the correct information out into the public, because I find that a lot of what is driving those sentiments is just poor information or misinformation that is being spread through the community by people not on this building committee. So there's, I don't know who's driving it, but there's stuff going on that I think if we keep doing what we're doing and continuing to educate the community and providing the facts out there, we can hopefully tamper some of the negativity that's driving it. And then the last thing is obviously act with respect. We listen to all opinions and adhere to our meeting norms. So anytime we have anyone from the community coming in, you know, there's going to be a lot of emotional discussions, especially as we get down into it. There's things that we may not be able to do or whatnot. Just treat everyone with respect, listen to everyone's opinions, and, you know, we're all human beings. We're all just trying to do a good job here. And I would just like that the town do the same towards us and treat us with respect and acknowledge that no one's getting paid to be here. We're doing this all out of the kindness of our hearts. So try to work more collaboratively and less non-collaboratively. Was there a better word for that? Non-collaboratively? I don't know. You know. What? Adversariously? Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, the last thing under my chairperson's update is an after-action review that I wanted to hold on the whole cost estimation process. So I feel like we've done a lot of learning about communication and how we relay information and the feedback we got and all of that we can take for the next go-around that's going to happen in April. So I think it's important to also make clear to the community about what the process really looks like, because I feel like the town officials made it sound like we were hiding information from them when we first got the initial estimates, and I think that's because they don't understand the process, and maybe they haven't built a school in so long or built anything in so long, I don't know, but they don't understand the process. But the process really is our architects and our construction management firms will go out and get a cost estimate, whether they do it themselves or they hire a third-party estimator. In this case, we had both. They come back with a number. In this situation, both Newfield and PAX, right? Newfield and PAX came up with estimates that were really close to each other. And they were in that $70 million range. So right off the bat, you realize that they probably were using the same assumptions, at the fact that they were so close together. And then we look at the actual numbers and say, well, what assumptions went into those estimates? Because there's a lot of assumptions that are made, especially this early in the process. And then we look at, okay, look at the square footage, look at all the obvious things to look at. And then as we got into the estimates and started looking at it and breaking it all down, we found the obvious kind of low-hanging fruit of areas where you can just cut off the top, say, yeah, we don't need that, that's wrong, blah, 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 and it brings that cost down. And that whole effort took about 2 weeks to do because we had numerous meetings, we had to go back and forth, we had to go dig up some information. It's not something that you can just do like instantly. And we wanted to make sure that we were giving ourselves enough time to do it because, as a project engineer and doing these types of projects, not building schools, but just projects of this magnitude for many, many years, when things like this happen, you have to anticipate the questions that your stakeholders are going to ask you, right? They're going to ask, well, why? Why did the cost go up? What's driving it? What's the biggest factor? All the questions that we asked ourselves, the town eventually asked. And we wanted to be prepared with those answers as opposed to not having answers and having them run off assuming what those answers are. And again, that misinformation spreading through the town. So there is a little bit of a trust breakage there, right? I'll admit to that. And if we can come to some agreement, maybe we can pull them into the process. And we probably should pull them into the process next time. But that is the situation that we found ourselves in this go-around. So for today, right now, real quick, I'm talking like 5-10 minutes top. I do want us to just walk through what do we think went well with this whole process? What do we think did not go well? And what do we want to do different next time? We've done after action for our firms. We've done after action reviews prior to all the other major things we've done, and they worked out really well. Usually come away with something different that helps us prevent some issues in the next go around. So just speak up, and you're welcome to provide your input as well. If there's things that you think of that you want to bring up, welcome that as well. So things that went well. I'm going to start a little OneNote.
All right, so one of the things I think went well was taking the tactical pause immediately. So we didn't wait and socialize the numbers. You jumped on it right away, you and several others here, to try and understand what made up those costs and what the differentials were. So I think it was important that you, I think within hours you made a plan to go do that.
Yes.
Of finding out. So I think
Yeah.
that went well.
Okay. Anything else?
I think.
So one thing I think that was a huge improvement this go around than the last go around was we had 2 estimators, and they were able to reconcile it. We weren't relying on just what one estimator thought.
Were we originally supposed to have 3? You were supposed to bring your own, right, originally? Do you think we'll have 3 next time? Okay. Okay.
I appreciated that in those couple weeks between our meetings that there was an effort to break down what the costs, what potential, improvements and a value management was looked at. But the waterfall was a very easy visual way to see where things, how the cost changed over time, where those big chunks of opportunities were. So I thought that was a positive way to show the breakout.
Yeah. That was really nice, Shannon. Thank you for that waterfall chart. Anything else? Things that went well? Ken? Did you have something? No? Oh. Oh, not so well. Okay. Anything else that went well?
Well, I would just give a kudos to, Jack and the folks here from Perkins, and even Tom Harden.
Tom Harden?
Harden from
PAX.
From PAX. I mean, quite honestly, he provided a wealth of information to help with the reconciliation to the concept design. Now, arguably, he was in the best position to do that, but my guess is he went far above and beyond.
Yeah. We were quite fortunate that we had the same
Right.
estimator in both cases.
Should we not have, I think it would have been a lot more man hours to even try to get
figure
some
it all
semblance
out.
of a picture, if possible at all. Just because, I know we're doing a SD estimate, what went well, what didn't, but I think lesson learned, at some point in the future, yeah, that concept estimate, not being able to, I guess, appreciate and have some type of, because it was perceived as such a, well, this is a very high level view, right? You're not zooming in, you're not worried about where the driveway's pointed, the width of this. Sure, and we could refine all that, but if there was no, if there was never going to be any room in the budget because we were given like the basement price of every, possible material in there, then that type of transparency would have been nice.
Yep. Thank you.
I'd like to say kudos to the communications subcommittee. Shannon and everybody has done a fantastic job. When I go on internet and I see some of these things, it's so professional. It looks so good. You guys have done a great job. And the tour at the middle school was fantastic. And I'll tell you, if we have to do that again, I'll be right there.
Yep.
If more people want to come out and see it.
I can't wait till we give a tour of the new school.
Yeah, that'd be nice. That'd be real nice. But no, they did a great job. They're doing a great job.
They are.
And should be recognized.
Quite professional. All right. Anything else that went well? All right. Let's get ready.
I have one.
Yes, please.
Having the correct square footage.
With the current estimate. I know. And I would add great collaboration with Perkins Eastman in trying to identify the value management. VM options. Good job. Anything else? All right. What didn't go well? Not everyone talk at once.
I don't know. Maybe I'm jumping ahead, but to do differently next time, I think the sequence of events from the time that the estimate came in and until we met with the town council, I mean, it was a very short time period, and there was a lot of evaluation, investigation that happened in that time. I don't think any of that could be done differently. The only recommendation, perhaps, is that, and I don't think we could have gone to town council that first day that we found out. That would not be value added, to your point earlier.
Yeah, we wouldn't have any answers for them.
Do we just give them a heads up that, hey, we need a meeting in a couple of weeks, and here's
what
the
we
plan?
did. I think that's what we did.
I don't think the issue was so much with town council. It was more the town manager saying that we weren't transparent and told them that we had an issue. But all our meetings are on YouTube, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure per our charge, someone from town council is supposed to be here, and Paul is always here. And the town manager or a representative for the town manager is supposed to be here, and that does not happen.
They're not here tonight.
If he said that he wasn't aware of what happened at our January 18th meeting, well, he should have been here.
Yeah.
If he was aware and read the minutes, he'd know.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think he
Yeah.
was aware that we had numbers then, but we didn't give him to him immediately on that after that meeting, is what he was complaining about.
well, he should have been at the meeting.
Yeah.
Somebody from town hall should have been at that meeting.
I think he would have known we went on a tactical pause to look at and find some answers before sharing it. Yeah.
The January 18th, that was our Zoom meeting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was on that call.
He was on
Yeah.
that call. He was on that call.
He was the one who swore on that call.
He did?
Yeah, he did. So he was on that, and I don't think it's. We were all just hearing that information in that moment too.
Right.
And
We got the number.
no,
that
we didn't
day.
have a number. We
Yeah.
just knew it was over, and I don't think it's.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a fair expectation to deliver that information without
Right.
validation
Right.
from our experts, right?
Yeah,
Like
right.
this is why we have that team. Let's work through it instead of just giving a number that has nothing behind it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the only place where we possibly could have had some earlier communication was, prior to the February 1st meeting, right? We had the waterfall graph. I think you mentioned you talked to Steve to give him a heads up. Certainly he was here, and maybe that's why Tony was here as well. At that meeting, all the numbers were shared publicly.
Right.
So at the very least, it was 2 weeks' time, not.
And we literally had those numbers together like hours before that meeting. It
Yeah.
wasn't like we had it.
We got it together in presentation form. We might have had a rough
no, we were
sense.
still
you know?
we were changing numbers
Okay.
to last
Yeah.
up to the last second. Like
Well, I
we
know
were
you. A lot
emailing-
of things were being fired off and changed here and there.
yeah.
Then I don't know if it would have benefited us before the town council to have a pre meeting with the town officials just to align
Before
on what
going to the building committee,
no before the town council meeting.
we did have a special meeting before town council meeting. What do you mean?
No. Oh.
The town officials.
Yeah.
Oh, prior to town council.
Prior to the special meeting.
We could have, but they wanted to go straight to the special town meeting. They didn't want.
I know. I just mean
Yeah.
because in the special town meeting, like I said, there's a lot of maybe misinformation thrown around. It would have been nicer to align and coordinate on.
Right.
Well, let's see
Yeah.
what information we have, so it could be a little more coordinated,
So-
more of a benefit for the town council members if kind of
So have a
Tony
meeting
and
with the-
Sharon and us were aligned on. You're gonna have bond council there, or you're gonna talk to OSCGR the night before, that would have been. Maybe
So like
flushed
not
out.
so much the town council you're saying, but like
Right, not the
the
town
town
council.
manager,
Yeah.
the finance
Just a small
director,
group, yeah.
and the building committee chair, or
Something like that,
some
just
kind of
Okay.
a
just to align
pre-meeting.
expectations. Hey, by the way, we're going to share some materials. We're going to walk through the cost estimates.
I don't
What
know
are you
that there
guys
would have
expecting?
even-
What are you looking for?
I don't know that there would have even been time.
It would have been really tight.
Right,
It was only
like-
a week after.
Right.
We had our meeting.
We
and
barely
then
had time. Yeah, because we.
We emailed our content on Monday.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, we did.
But
Yeah.
so again, it was extremely tight,
Yeah.
and all I could say is if there could have been a little bit of a reconciliation prior to, so it could have made it a little more productive for town council decision making versus.
I agree with that
facts.
statement.
The
Fact-
town,
We
tit
should
for
be
tat on
clear.
facts, yeah.
We want participation every other Wednesday at these meetings.
In this forum, right.
Yeah, come here. If you care about it, come here.
is it weird to have the town manager at our meetings with the OSCGR?
We've seen it before.
Yeah.
Not everyone, but we have.
Most often, they're looking for participation by the district and by the building committee to some extent. And there's no reason that somebody from the town could not attend.
Okay.
And if that's expedites communication among the parties on the owner's side of the table, that's fine.
Okay.
But I think one expectation, though, would be that we're filtering all of our communications through a single point of contact, like you or Roseanne, but the building committee and our representatives.
I think that's what caught many people by surprise last Wednesday, is to hear that outside of this group who has been given the charge to be responsible for the project, and the district, who is the client of the state as far as the grant monies are concerned. Yes, the checks get written by the town, but it's the district that is actually the recipient of the grant. So knowing that communication with that agency at state level is building committee / district typical, to know that there was a meeting outside of any of this group to talk about project particulars, kind of caught people off guard. And I think there was, we down at this end of the table state speak, because we're involved in it every day. And for somebody who doesn't, sometimes the terminology or, yeah, I know you heard this word, but what that infers is X. I think the message that was received by the town manager and by the finance director may not have been understood the way it was intended to be shared, or, again, from meeting to meeting, as they at the state level learn more about what our dilemma is, which they learned the following day with the meeting we had already scheduled. I think that kind of reset some perspectives as well. So it was a little stumbling block as far as communication to have had that ex parte conversation, so to speak, without those who are living in the project every day.
Okay.
And then, yes, the meetings, and it would be great to have town manager or finance director attendance here. But if not, outside of these meetings, again, having that line of communication open. I didn't know, as we go along, I mean, if there's things that are financial projections and working with bond counsel and our bond underwriter, if there's things that they need, I presume Sharon's reaching out to you. But from the Board of Finance side, like we haven't seen, we're not seeing anything yet. Now obviously the cost of the project is going to be a big factor, but even if the cost hadn't been changing, if there's things that they need to understand along the way, like when cash flows are going to come out, et cetera.
Yeah.
I just want to, I don't know how else to try to continue to encourage them to either participate directly in the meeting or if not, just ahead of the meeting or something else. So, let me know from the Board of Finance perspective.
Do we need to present to the Board of Finance? Like, do we need to give them updates?
Well, I've been giving them updates just about the cost of the project and the status, but in terms of what it means in terms of the financing and the way we're going to do short-term bonds and roll the bonds and get the money back, as they have questions or we have that information, we can definitely share it.
Okay. All right. Anything else that didn't go well or we can do differently?
I have to admit that I really didn't follow the project prior to running into the mayor at Mitchell's and him asking me to be on the building committee. But going back to the previous projects in town, there seemed to be some cohesiveness between the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and Board of Education with regards to the high school project, and then followed later on with the WIS. And by doing it that way, they formed a building committee. The building committee then took up the process of hiring the architects, construction manager, that whole process that we went through. And that was about a 6 to 8 month process that we consolidated into about a 3-month process. Additionally, this building committee inherited an architect, a project manager, that we had no selection in it, we had no input into it. And so we took their information that was given to us. I'm not saying it's bad, good, or indifferent, but we really, as a committee, didn't have time to assimilate, digest that whole package of information because of the tight time frame. And I presume at some point in the future, I may not be alive, but ECS is probably going to be the next one on the block. And I would hope that the board, now it's the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, get on the same page, form a building committee once a decision made that they were going to move eventually forward with a project, and then the building committee would have that cohesiveness and take it from inception all the way through to completion.
Okay. All right, just writing these notes down. Okay, anything else? Good? All right, thank you. All right, next on our agenda is Communications Subcommittee Report.
All right. So the Communications Committee was very busy after we did have our last meeting where we got the estimate, and we used that to put together an FAQ for the community that we published to the website and promoted via social media. So I think, I hope that the community found that helpful. It's probably something we should add to our list to do next time, to the next estimate that comes through, to put together that FAQ document that just went through, what does this mean? Why is it so much higher? Just kind of high level answers of things that folks might be asking. We would like to move forward with the community forum that we had scheduled prior, that then took place during our tactical pause. So we'd like to propose March 22nd as a community forum to provide the town an update on the schematic design. Understood that things are changing, and we'll be transparent in that. Just wanted to touch base to see if that works for the committee. That is a Wednesday. And we would propose to do that via the YouTube streaming at 7 p.m.
That works for me. Anyone have any issues with that date? Perkins, you guys have issues with that date? Okay. Newfield? Jack? Dr. Macri? You have issues? You don't have issues? Okay. But not with that date?
That's not one.
We're good? Okay.
Okay, so we will plan working with the design subcommittee to plan that and move forward. We also need a copy of the latest ed spec. I think we were waiting from that from Arcadis because we would like to get that up on the website to make sure that's the kind of reference point that we go to. So we just need that emailed to us, Jack, when you have a chance. The latest ed spec.
Updated ed spec.
With the addendum or...
Dr. Macri, will the amendment to the ed spec be on the agenda for the next board meeting? And March 14th, okay.
March 14th.
So we can treat it as a draft, and I can give you a copy of the draft, and then
Okay.
that'll be formatted as the board likes it to be for their actions before it goes on their agenda.
Okay, thank you. And then we have our next subcommittee meeting prior to our next building committee on March 1st. We'll be using that to discuss how we're going to capture and communicate about the actual building process when we get there, how we can involve students, and then plan for the community forum.
Thank
And
you.
that concludes my report.
Design.
The only meeting that, well, there were two. The traffic meeting was yesterday afternoon at Town Council. I know Perkins and Jack were there, and they'll probably summarize what took place there. And then today there was a plan update review meeting, which I was not able to attend. Ken Jackson did, and I believe they're going to speak on that later today as well. I did receive the emails from both John Post and Ken Cleveland with some value management kind of points, things to look at. So I am going to be creating a log and some sort of sheet to track what was discussed, decisions made, yes, no, that sort of thing. We'll be updating the website with the value management information, design info, now that we're in this next phase. So there'll be updates to that website hopefully this weekend. And then there are upcoming meetings for both security and technology in the near future.
Okay, thank you. All right, Perkins.
Good evening, everyone, again. Our agenda tonight, we were going to give an update on the town council meeting, but Rosanna took care of that. We're going to review some additional value management strategies, give an update on building design as part of that, site design update, an HVAC and sustainable system options that CES will present, the update on the traffic study meeting that we had yesterday, and our typical schedule update meetings and data gathering and next steps. So value management, so this is the great chart that Shannon put together, explaining where the project started at referendum and how we've got to the $75.8 million current estimate at SD, the additional 500-seat auditorium value, and then soft cost increase based on the increase brought us to a revised estimate of 77.6.
I just wanted to clarify something on the auditorium.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think everyone is aware of this. So when I spoke to Tom at PAX, the direction given to him by Tecton back in the day was for the 490-seat auditorium, but the space allotment for those extra seats were never incorporated, meaning they planned for the seats, but they didn't plan for the space to actually hold the seats. So the square footage wasn't added to. Does that make sense? They're planning for seats that were in the parking lot. Okay. Just wanted to clarify that.
So at the last building committee meeting, there was accepted value management for 1.3 for a site reduction. Abatement, we right-sized the abatement based on the environmental reports of $0.6 million, and then building value management of $2.4 million that was accepted. Brings us to the revised estimate of 73.3. And we're looking at further cost mitigations, $400,000 for roof screens potentially. Porter Road, we'll discuss that as part of the later site adjustments. CES will discuss the still mostly electric HVAC option. And then water retention, we'll have further information on that from SLR as we continue through the design. But it sounds like based on the meeting that we had yesterday, that the option of having both buildings on site requiring the water retention is not going to be an issue. So we could design for the main building, and we'll do some other mitigation costs measures during construction when both buildings are up. So just a quick reminder of where we were at the end of last meeting. These are the items that were accepted. I don't think we need to go through these again, but we'll see some of these items in the revised site plan and then the revised building plan.
So some of those, like the amphitheater, was an bid option. Or
Correct.
whatever?
That'll be an alternate.
Alternate.
Yeah. So that would actually lower this number further.
Okay.
Sorry, that one snuck back in there.
Okay. That's all right. I just wanted to make sure. Trying to
Yeah, that
constant clear communication.
Yes,
make sure we're all on the same page.
The amphitheater will be a bid alternate. So this log of the other, so the gross square foot reduction, that was nothing that was accepted, but it was something we worked into the plan. The demo abatement is something that was worked into the plan, and then we'll go over these again. So the fire pump, we're looking at that. We looked at the code for we'll call it the performance area to avoid any confusion. So the performance area, after looking at the code, we're determining that we can make it a platform, which would mean that we could avoid doing a automatic standpipe, which should be able to allow us not to have the fire pump.
Can you explain what the difference is?
So
Yeah, I can explain it.
the fire pump?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to explain it.
You do the platform.
The platform. Right. So a stage is a room defined by the code that's separated from the seating and area by a proscenium wall. It also has certain requirements for size and height, and overhanging curtains is the major factors that define a stage. In order to be classified as a platform, we have to be type 2 construction, which we are. It has to be under 3,000 square feet, which we are. And it has to be 1/3 of the entire room, including the seating area, which we are. We're under that. And there was a fourth one. You remember?
Less than 30 inches or less.
Oh, and the height is 30 inches or less from the
Height
main
from
floor.
the main floor.
Right.
Okay.
So technically, the stage/platform is flush with the main floor, but there is a 30-inch drop when you slope down in the seating.
Okay.
So therefore, we feel that, and we won't have any overhanging curtains. And if we do a couple adjustments to the proscenium wall and make them wing walls, there won't be a separation, and it's going to be considered one room instead of two separate spaces.
The real tripping hazard there with a quote-unquote legitimate stage has a fly loft, and you have scenery and curtains that are a fire load over your head if you're on the stage. So that's one of the reasons that they require that fire-rated proscenium wall, so that you're separating that hazard from the audience if something were to happen during a performance. We're not going to have a fly loft. We're not going to have scenery 50 feet above our heads. We don't have those other features that would push us in that direction. So Perkins is tweaking some of the other more
Nuanced.
the architectural features, to make sure that we don't have one of those create a tripping hazard that puts us into that category.
Okay.
So no, if we were 3 feet above the lowest level of the seating area, then that causes us trouble. So they manage it so it's only 30 inches, so that we comply with all the smaller pieces of the code. But since we don't have that fuel load of scenery and curtains 50 feet in the air, we won't need the standpipe, and hopefully that means we won't need the pump as well.
Can you clarify what that means, that we're not going to have scenery, or are we going to have a main curtain?
You can have curtains on a platform, but you're not lifting that scenery
Okay.
way up overhead. You're going to move
Okay.
your scenery to the side. It's not going to be in a 60-foot tall room.
Okay.
And
You're not gonna have
So we
drop
won't ever
scenery.
have scenery that needs to go up?
No, not
Okay.
not at a middle school level.
Okay,
Right.
all right.
Well, I mean, we don't have it now. The high school doesn't have it now.
Right. In order to do, do you know the height?
We're up there 25 more plus feet. We'll have to check. It's appropriately sized. Actually, we haven't tweaked the plan at all. Actually, we fall into the category as Jack described. So we're not making really any concessions to make this considered a platform as designed. So
What's the hanging curtain thing you're talking about?
What's that?
Hanging curtain? You said no hanging curtain?
Yeah, there'll be no overhead hanging curtains. So that all the curtains will be bi-acting and horizontally sliding. Which
Oh,
is
as opposed to
permitted
going up and
instead
down.
of going
I
up.
see.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
That's
there's
too
nothing
that's too
hanging.
fancy.
There's no fuel load hanging over your head.
Yeah.
So
I
and,
getcha.
and then you're permitted to have sound and lighting overhead,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that's permitted for a platform as well.
There is a
Yeah.
gridiron above the stage, so that lights.
You could put lights and sound though. Okay. Yeah, that's important. Okay.
Nothing goes up and down.
So because all of that, it's now a platform.
Correct.
And because it's a platform, you don't need a pump?
We don't need an automatic standpipe,
Automatic standpipe.
which was triggering the need for a fire pump. Do you want to elaborate on that part? Wait, before you get that.
Also smoke
Or smoke evac.
That's very important.
Okay.
Emergency smoke, so.
Yeah.
Which you might see in the
There you go. Yeah, I'll mention.
We didn't pull those out
So a standpipe is essentially just a large pipe that the fire department can connect to run their hoses, and it runs just off of whatever the building pressure is. An automatic, it's kind of a weird terminology, but an automatic standpipe has a defined pressure requirement that's much higher than what we have in the street, and it's almost always higher than what we have in the street. So rough math, we need about 55 PSI, give or take, pounds per square inch. You know, just think about 55 to run the sprinklers in the building. We need 100 to do the automatic standpipe.
Hence the pump to bring the pressure up.
And if you guys are familiar with fire hoses, you know, fire hoses coming from a fire truck, you know, people try and hold on to it and it like, you know, makes you go all over the place. That's because of that 100 PSI. So the idea of an automatic standpipe, if you do need it, firefighters hook up their hose to that standpipe behind the stage to, again, you have a large fuel load, huge fire you need to fight. They need that pressure, they need that flow. So if we don't have all of that, the manual wet standpipe, which we call it, is there's still water there that they can use. And in reality, they come, you know, when they respond to a fire, the pumper truck hooks up and provides that extra pressure if they need.
But we have overhead sprinklers, right?
Yes, this is in addition to that. So again, with like what Jack was saying, with a high fuel load and a full fly stage, there's a lot of stuff that can burn and create a high hazard. You need sprinklers and the ability for the firefighters to get in with their hoses and really knock the fire down quickly. But we don't have all of that, so.
I mean, couldn't you even just put like a fire hydrant outside the door if you really wanted to, and then they could hook up their truck to it? I mean, it's like right there. Like the door's like right there.
Yeah, when you think about this practically, there's a lot of things you could do, but the code is like very specific, again, with all these terminologies. And
So either way, we don't need an automatic pipe thing. We just need a regular pipe. We don't.
I think we need
do
to
any pipe?
confirm all of this, but. Right.
Yeah, the pump is itself. So we had the pump in our original estimate, and we can take the pump out.
Yes.
And how much did that come out?
I had to check with Tom to see that exact value.
Okay.
It's the pump and the ancillary things that connect to it, and it's a lot of complicated little.
$2 million right there. That's great. Okay.
Still good. We'll take it.
Yeah, we do
Is
need
that,
more
is that
six-figure
just for the
ones.
pump? Does it include the room and the fire rated walls and the doors and? Okay.
There's other stuff.
It's better than 50,000, so I'll take it. I'll take it.
Hey, Joe, did I hear you say we had a smoke evacuation system?
We don't. So
Okay.
if you're a stage and you're over a certain square footage, you're required to have emergency smoke hatches. But because we're not a stage, that won't be required.
So that's not something we can take out.
Right. No.
Dang it. Thanks, All right. Thank you.
So, yeah, this is the value management scope adjustments in visual form that we talked about last time. So then we received additional value management suggestions from the building committee. So we've looked at a lot of these, and I'll just run through them quick, and we have a visual on those as well. So looking at reducing fenestration meaning the size of storefront and curtain walls and trying to reduce that, right size it. Looking at different metal panel options. Most of the metal panel occurs above the roof, so we're looking at different options for that, different material. Building insulation options. We've actually got some numbers through Newfield, through Tom. So we've selected a building insulation that is the most cost effective. It's actually a very good high R value, so that'll be good for the energy modeling. Looking at CMU in lieu of brick veneer, that's ongoing study. We're looking to eliminate the sunshades and the light shelves from the facade. The light shelves kind of went away. We looked at some other options within the classrooms that Mike will talk about. We did have sloped ceilings at SD. But we looking at bringing the building down, lowering ceiling heights, things like that. Flattening the ceilings is a value engineering savings. So we have removed the light shelves already from the project. Roofing material, we're looking at that. Currently in the SD, we had TPO, but we're looking at EPDM as a cost-saving option. Locker type and locker base material, we're looking at that. Reducing wall tile where we can, floor finishes. These are all going to be ongoing as we move through DD and finalize that package. Reducing gypboard ceilings. So some of that was done in the classrooms. As we lowered the ceiling, we were able to get rid of gypboard soffits at the corridor to allow the ductwork to come in. looked at piping and electrical feeder material. We talked about that with CS today. One of the things that we heard in the reconciliation meeting with the electrical feeders is that the reduction from copper to aluminum is not as great of a savings as it used to be. I don't know if Brian could elaborate on that. Yeah, so it's because more people are switching to aluminum, the demand's going up, and copper's coming down a little bit, so there is probably still some savings, but it's not as significant as it used to be.
The key there is that our spec can be written in such a way on bid day that either is acceptable, and so bidders can decide whatever they think is most cost advantageous and hopefully get the best price for whatever it is, copper or aluminum.
Is there yeah, I was about to say, is
Copper is better, but
copper's better because
longevity and then So copper is better for longevity, for conduction, and so aluminum is cheaper by material, but you need to have a little bit more of it to conduct the same electricity as copper. So copper is a little bit better of a conductor. The other thing is, so we recommend or we allow aluminum only for what we call panel feeders. This is going to be technical terminology, but essentially wires that are feeding a panel, and then the panel is feeding a bunch of individual circuits. So the bigger feeders are constantly carrying some electric load. They're never completely off. Like a light switch is on and then it's off, and so you have power coming through the wire and then not coming through the wire. So that constant cycling of power, copper does very well. Aluminum, over time, it will wear out because you're energizing it and then de-energizing it. So these bigger feeders that always have some sort of power running through it, aluminum is totally fine for that, and you just have to upsize it a little bit. Again, it usually is a cost savings, but lately, because this is kind of like the obvious VE item for every project over the last 5 years, everybody's now doing it, so it's a constant, it's like an economic thing that it's now.
do we have longevity or reliability data on copper versus aluminum?
We do. We can get that. It's when applied right, sized right, and used only on these bigger feeders that are constantly seeing electrical load, it's comparable.
Okay.
Use aluminum in towering inferno.
What's that?
I mean, as we move to more digital types things, I feel like the load is going to be significant, right? And the aluminum would still be comparable with all that?
Yeah, again, as long as it's constantly seeing flow,
Yeah.
and not being turned on and off constantly, then it's not an issue.
Aluminum changes with temperature more than copper does.
Yes.
So if it gets cold, it shrinks. When it gets warm, it expands, and the connections can loosen up.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons why branch circuits are not good for copper, but a main feeder is acceptable.
Gotcha.
All right, so we're also looking at the exposed duct work shape. We don't have a lot of exposed duct work in the project, so I'm not sure if this is significant savings here. Quantity of control points, so CES is looking at that. Probably not a lot to be reduced from what I heard today, based on the system that we have. Looking at joist in lieu of steel beams, we actually looked at this with our structural engineer, D. Simone. We're thinking that with joists, the benefit of joists is that when you have a lot of the same spans and you get an economy of scale of prefabricated joists, that would be a savings. But with the architecture and the different array of spaces that are in this project, that probably wouldn't be the best use to go to joists.
We should mention that we do have a lot of truss joists in the
Yeah,
span
so
structure.
so we do. Joe is pointing out to me that we do have truss joists in the big span structures. The auditorium and the gymnasium are truss joists already. Lightning protection and quantity of flagpoles. This would be a town decision if you want to have lightning protection, and we've done those as bid alternates. And I think right now we're speccing 2 flagpoles. That's in the drawings. So if you wanted to go down to 1, that could be another savings.
Ken, did you put lightning protection on the high school or intermediate school?
Not to my recollection. I don't think we did either.
Okay, so
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking we don't need it because we've got some hills around the school, so we're kind of like in a low spot. We're not like, it's not.
Even though with 2 floors?
Well, we're 2 floors, but we're not like out in the middle of a big open field. You know, there's some topography around us.
Is that just like putting a lightning rod on the building? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah,
Lots of lightning rods.
yeah, it's lightning rods like every 10 feet or so. They're-
It could get very expensive, but usually what we'll do is we'll bid that as a bid alternate, and you can make a decision then. You don't have to make a decision.
Yeah, let's make it a bid alternate.
Yeah, yeah. And depending on what the numbers are and how much you have.
Yeah, isn't there like guidelines as to if you know if you need it or not, depending on building height and all this other stuff?
Yeah, the guideline typically comes back recommended, not required, recommended, but it's not that scientific, to be honest.
The town should probably confirm with their insurance.
Yep.
What's the risk of not having it? What happens if a building gets, is it
Struck
more
by
than
lightning?
just blowing out your, panels? I mean, obviously it could be fire. What's the big risk in not having it, like the big risk?
Great question. I don't know that we've had
I
a
don't-
lightning strike at a school that we could know what it would do.
We've heard of lightning strikes that have.
So it's rare.
Created fires.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only lightning strike I've heard of that's been a real issue is that they had a lightning strike on their dorm and it caused the fire.
Yeah, so that's probably your big risk.
But, keep in mind that building was also 100 years old. So it's not going to be as non-combustible as our school.
All right, so this list, I'm gonna kind of skip most of this list so we could get to the the architecture. So most of the items on the previous list are shown on the 3D view, and Mike's gonna go through these.
Okay, here we go again. So this is, we sent this around a couple nights ago, and these are all recommendations against them to help reduce the cost in the end. We're trying to preserve, obviously, the program of the school. So I think a lot of these things would have been fallen that nice to have kind of category. But understanding where we are in the challenges we need to overcome, we're making some of these recommendations. As Joe already mentioned a few of them, and if there are any of them that you guys are opposed to or have questions about, feel free to ask. Maybe starting in the upper right-hand corner, the reduction of the mechanical roof screens. We are suggesting, and we're going to study utilizing a company like Cityscapes Inc., which we've used before over at Fairfield Prep School, where the screen wall actually attaches to the unit itself. So you're actually individually screening these units. You don't have structure penetrating up through the roof of the building. So wherever we can utilize those, we're gonna continue to study that. So we think that would be a nice cost savings. Some locations we still might want to, like this location here, build a physical screen wall. You screen 3 or 4 units with one wall. So that's something we're looking at. We're looking
Sorry,
at.
can you just slow down? Because
Certainly.
last meeting, I know we talked about the number of areas where we're raising up those vertical windows, and we were reducing the number of them. But now it looks like you're proposing now eliminating a
He's
good
talking
majority.
about screens. The screens are
Yep.
right? We're talking about screen.
So these are mechanical
okay.
screens.
All right, my mistake. I'm just looking at the topography of the roof, and it looks different than
Yep.
what we looked at too.
Yeah, we're going to work our way around.
Okay.
There are a few things.
All right.
Yeah.
Mike-
So these are
Gotcha.
actually just screen walls around the mechanical units. Okay.
Okay. Before you leave those, does that affect the maintenance accessibility?
A little, but I mean, if there's a real benefit, cost savings, and fewer penetrations through the roof, I mean, it's not a huge impact. It is a small impact. Yeah.
Okay.
there
And
is a- there is a-
performance of it's not getting in the way of like, filters or anything like that?
No,
Not
performance
suffocating the
of the
things.
unit is unaffected.
Yeah.
We did ask the question, at the traffic study meeting, the town planner was there, and we asked, is it going to be required? He says, well, that'll ultimately be a decision of the zoning board.
Okay.
He says there's not an absolute requirement in the regs, but it is something that they will discuss, and again, from areas that the public can see the building. He said, we're adjacent to a park. You mean the public in the park, or are we talking about the public way, which is the street, and we're off the street? So I guess there's a lot of latitude to argue our case with zoning about the fact that this is not like an eyesore on Main Street. This is something where the scope of those screens could end up being reduced, and obviously, whether they're equipment mounted or not, fewer is better when we're trying to balance the budget.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Yeah, I was just curious if it affects people that are up there that have to do maintenance.
Yeah, and they're designed to where the panels do come off, so you can access it. So it's another step of you have to take the panels off and put them back on to access it. So yeah, so there's a bit of a compromise. There are some areas too. If you compare this to the last time we looked at it, working with CES, we anticipated a unit being here. It's no longer needed, so that those screen walls were just eliminated. So we're moving in the right direction, and we'll work our way around it. I think everything here. Some of the roof forms, these areas highlighted in yellow here, we're trying to reduce over here at the Board of Ed. It angled up. We're trying to create some architecture over here. We still have an overhang. We still have weather protection. We still have an architectural element. We're just making it less expensive to build. So we think that's kind of an easy one. At the front door, the length of that, we call it the porch, the amount of overhang and protection that we had at the front, we're creating your front door moment. We're scaling that back a little bit, and we're again working hand in hand with a structural engineer to make this a little more feasible to construct. And you'll see in the next view, this western side of Main Street, the shape looks a little different, and that's done to make it a little more constructible with the structural engineers. So, and also reducing the amount of curtain wall, amount of glass, wholesale, all the way around the building. We're reducing the amount of glass significantly. Over here, the simplified roof note, that's also over the media center. That was very similar to the Board of Ed. Again, we had very similar architectural expressions there. It's still there. It's just flat and easier to construct, right?
That front yellow section that you've highlighted in the front of the building.
Yes.
That's tapered downward, right? Slope
Correct.
downward.
Yes, just for a portion of it, just basically in front of the auditorium. That
Right.
front portion. Yes.
So when it rains,
Yes.
is that water hitting then that overhang below it and then just kind of falling?
We're working on the detail now, but we'll collect the water at the bottom of
Okay,
the pitch.
so there's
and
going to
take
be
it
some
down.
kind of water collection thing
Of
there.
course.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna have water dripping on
Okay.
anyone down below.
Just want to make sure.
Of course, that's a good question. Some of these areas where it says eliminate curtain wall, the whole eastern side of Main Street. Previously, we were showing glass on both sides. We eliminated that, so now it's a lightweight metal panel. Eliminated a canopy, kind of a nice to have adjacent to the doors, which lead into the PE and locker area.
Quick question. By removing that curtain wall, do you remove the natural light into those areas in the hallway?
No, I'll show you the next view, and I actually
Okay.
have a kind of a preliminary interior rendering of that space, which was not ready for the other night. So we'll
Okay.
share that with you. Yeah,
Thanks.
reducing, again, the amount of glazing here. When those sunshades came off, the vertical and the horizontal sunshades, again, would be nice to have. We started to look at and simplify and reduce the size of some of these windows. Still really nice, ample daylight and views, just a little bit smaller and a little more efficient. I think Joe mentioned we're also looking at reducing the overall height of the roof. And that's not really a valley management. This typically happens as we get deeper into the project and we know the size of the ductwork and the structure and how it's all coordinated. If there's a little extra room, we can tighten it up. We're taking a course of bricks, off around the entire building. That's reducing volume. So we're still aiming to hit about 10-foot tall ceilings in the classrooms, which is great. We typically try to hit 10 feet in a new building. Corridors, we're looking at maybe 9 feet because they typically have larger duct runs running down that space, and then you branch off into the classrooms. So even with the reduction in the height, of this classroom wing, the second floor up here, and a couple areas, the Board of Ed, we're still maintaining really nice spaces. And with that, we're reducing the height of the windows. Still windows go up to almost, 8 inches shy of the ceiling. So really nice natural light in those spaces.
So, sorry, how does reducing the roof jive with the first thing where you said you're putting some of the mechanical equipment underneath the roof? Or did I misunderstand? So instead of having screens that are covering things that would otherwise be on the roof, you're saying sink it below the roof, weren't you? Or misunderstood?
No.
No, the screens are going to go directly onto the
So-
mechanicals, it sounded like, versus the
Yeah.
screens going into the roof.
Maybe I didn't explain that correctly.
Oh, then okay.
They're going to be
Like-
like shrunk wrap.
Like
type of-
Yeah.
structurally, they don't have to put the panels into the roof. The
Okay.
panels.
Yes. Oh, you're saying they're fixed to the.
Yeah, sorry
oh,
for-
okay.
sorry if I didn't explain that well.
No,
Yeah.
I missed.
Yeah, the units
I
are
was still
still
thrown
there.
off by the missing additional pop-up stuff.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Okay.
we're getting there.
I got you. Okay.
You need to just start there.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
we'll finish with
My eyes
that
went to
one.
the red.
Right. So those would be a really nice to have, and we actually have a view of what it looks like standing in the corridor. Still think it can be a great space. The floor plan didn't change, so you still have the extra room which is utilized. Let me go to.
Can I ask a quick question about the sunshades? Did that
Yes.
provide any like building energy efficiency?
Yeah.
Because it was going to those would potentially block sun into the building.
Yeah, it would. So, yeah. Yeah, so sunshades do.
So they were
go
more
off.
than just like design, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It's all glare, also glare control. But the building is oriented, appropriately in general. So a lot of the big box spaces, like the gym, we had windows on the north side, arts on the north side.
Yeah.
Even the serration in, the way that we're starting to sculpt Main Street, those windows. So to answer your question, yes, we do still have natural light into that space, which is really the heart of the school. We really love to preserve that. It's a nice to have, but again, I think it's worth it if we can afford it in the end. We incorporated some of these solid walls to help block some of that direct daylight in there. So we're starting to do that with the architecture as we move forward. But back to the question of these reforms. They're nice to have. We're shrinking and shrinking. We reduced them from last time, so we're suggesting even just eliminating them altogether. It's obviously, this is as efficient as you can get, but we still have decent curtain wall, basically floor-to-ceiling curtain wall at the end of this widened corridor. So you have a decent amount of natural light coming in. We're trying to get a little bit higher ceiling in there as well, with less ductwork running through it, so maybe 11 feet tall. And I'll show you a view in a moment. So here, previously what happened on this floor would also happen on the second floor, but on the first floor, you'd still have a normal ceiling. So here, now they're, it's kind of equal for each of the classroom grades. And we are kind of treating it special with a kind of a window seat that the kids can sit in adjacent to the outdoors. I think I hit everything on here. I just want to show this view so we could take a look at what we're looking at for Main Street along here with the clear story windows, still preserving the daylight. Yeah, we mentioned flattening this roof out, and it's still there. So, any questions on these before? Yeah.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Please.
So before that clear story was on both sides, down Main Street?
Yep. We did it in a couple spots. So we had it here and here, and this is prior to us really loading this up. We knew we were going to have a bunch of air handlers in there. It's a great spot. The building screens them. But seeing how close it came to the windows here and the way that we're going to run the ducts into kind of the low portion of the back of the auditorium, you'd be looking up at ductwork, through that window. So that one was a no-brainer. So we swapped that out. And then looking down at the end of the corridor, if I go forward again, you're at a narrow part of the corridor, not narrow, but a tighter part of the corridor. You have light looking straight out at the end, and you also have light on one side, and then you're looking through a cafeteria, so you have plenty of natural light in this space.
Okay.
So,
That makes sense.
I don't think there are really any compromises. It would have been nice to have, and this is part of the process too. As you start to load in different disciplines, you start to say, is that really necessary? Is that going to compromise the quality? And we think it's not going to.
Okay.
So.
Can I ask, just to clarify, going down the classroom wings, so the only natural light now is the big window at the end, is that correct?
There are
And then the bleed from the Main Street?
The Main Street, we don't have that view, but there is that secondary corridor, which takes you, I think it's right here, which takes you out on these bottom floors adjacent to the elevator. So there is some natural light
Okay.
coming in there from us there as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. So before we get to the views, there's a couple of other items we don't want to kind of forget. I know there was a comment last time I wasn't here, but there's a comment where we were trying to find every square foot that we could. We were trying to hit a target. So what we did is we rotated the stair and kind of tucked it into this location. It saved a few square feet, but I think the quality of the space we lost by doing that. So we rotated it back around. Now you have the same exact stairs, A and B, very efficient, and now you have that openness on every single end of the wing, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, which is really nice. There's something else that we are looking at. I know it's been brought up here a couple times. Is this internal in the corridor, in these wings, are a few steps in a ramp early on in the project based on the existing topography. From east to west, the site gradually, almost don't notice it when you're out there, but it drops a few feet, right? So we were looking at the firewalls, kind of breaking the building and dropping the academic wing down 2 feet to be more efficient. We've done this before, added ramps and steps in a hallway, and it works okay. But if there's a way to eliminate these, and we're looking at that right now, we're looking at the impacts, the cost impacts of adjusting, maybe reutilizing more fill, grading a little differently, but bringing these back up, basically raising these two wings back up 2 feet. You have to grade up to it, and there'd have to be a couple steps and a ramp outside the building to get students away from the building in case of emergency. So we think it's a good opportunity to eliminate these, and so we're looking at right now. There might be a cost add to this in the long run. We don't have that, the information for you now. Same with these items right now. I mean, we're flying, developing the DD set.
Mm-hmm.
So wish we had numbers associated with these. We don't. We're making these best practice, suggestions.
As long as we're moving in the right direction and not adding costs, I think it's okay.
Moving in the direction. This one potentially might be moving in the wrong direction, but in the long run, to not have that obstacle in the hallways, like I said, it's been done and it can work successfully. But now's the time to make that decision for the next 50 to 100 years. If we could do it now, and eat the costs somewhere else, and have a very level building without those there, we're recommending that. So I think we're going to move along that route unless there's some opposition here. Same with any of these items here. If there's something that you guys feel strongly against, some of the reductions that we've made, let us know, and we'll try to incorporate that back into the set.
So the pop-ups, the red areas, was to just put light in, or was it just nice to look at from the outside?
It was really from inside out. We design. It's obviously intentional to design a beautiful school, but it's not. It's really about the spaces inside that we're trying to create. So we're trying to create that nice natural light from the north. But as it started to reduce in size, it became a kind of a limited moment down at the end of the classroom. And I'll jump to that real quick, just since we're talking about it. So these are two preliminary views. We didn't talk about colors and materials and everything yet, but we wanted to give you a sense of the scale of these spaces. So the first view, we're going to be standing right here, and basically it would be the same view standing here or even on the second floor. And then the second view would be standing really just kind of outside the restrooms, outside basically at this knuckle looking down Main Street to give you a sense of this space. So here we are. So this is rendered with an 11-foot ceiling, so a little bit taller than you would have in a classroom. Previously, there would be windows up on this side only, as the ceiling would pop up another 4 or 5 feet, or maybe even more, to get some light in there. The corridor does get wider here. A typical corridor is basically probably from this kid's foot over to the wall, and it does increase in width over here. As we discussed with the educators, this space is really valuable for them. It's for the paraprofessionals can utilize that space in the corridor, and others can utilize it as well. It's a really nice to have breakout space on this wall. We did push the lockers and consolidate the lockers all to one side, so you don't, as you turn around and walk down the hallway, you never have back-to-back kids getting into lockers. So it makes for a less congestion within the space. So you do have this nice curtain wall with beautiful views and a lot of natural light coming into the space. We're suggesting this kind of nice built-in window perch that kids can utilize as again, additional breakout space. And then your door, which takes you out to the outdoor learning. So this is this view. Now, suggesting maybe wall graphics. It's a location for something special. Maybe it's an accent color. We didn't talk about colors or anything yet, but we're showing you, where classrooms are. Maybe that there's this little niche which takes you into the classrooms. As Joe mentioned, we did eliminate all soffits in the classrooms, which is a good cost savings. So basically, you have tile from wall to wall.
What's a soffit?
A soffit is basically. I'm trying to see if we have one here. There's gonna be one over here.
Isn't that what we saw at
the
last school?
It's basically
value engineered out of here too.
It's basically a change in ceiling.
Yeah.
It's lower.
Yeah.
Ductwork.
Like over there?
Yeah, you're looking at one kind of above your head. It's where the ceiling
Remember
drops. So it's
in
basically
North Haven? Was it North Haven?
Oh,
That
the
was last-
floating ceiling?
those are
That's
ceiling
different.
But it was.
Imagine here, like this drops 2
Yep.
feet.
And it's basically
Oh,
sheetrock,
okay.
so it's
Yeah.
so it's a built-out wall. Yeah.
I get you.
And then this is a view needs a lot of massaging and working, but this gives you a sense of that scale. So this is the natural light. You're looking towards the back, so the cafeteria would be around the corner on the right, where it says Falcons right here. This is your entrance into the gym. If you look further to the left, you're looking out down into the courtyard. This is your learning commons, and then your maker spaces. We put the word innovate here, but there's innovation centers along Main Street. And again, you're getting a decent amount of natural light filtering into this space. I know we talked early on about the kind of the piece spitting out, the bite taken out of the plan. But we think it does bring a lot of quality, a lot of value to this, right? A moment, basically a third of the way down the space. This is the widest portion of the corridor of Main Street. As you turn around, it maybe gets a little bit wider towards the front door, but this is to handle the loads of people coming out of the gymnasium, of the auditorium, and heading towards that front door. You have to take 2/3 out there. So, at these pinch points, at these tight points, it's almost minimum, of what we can do. So there's really we don't have that, overwhelmingly large space. So we're trying to give it to a little bit in height, right? Which makes sense. And we're collecting that light from the west and northwest. We did also talk about the concern over corners and hidden moments. So these glass corners here are display cases in some instances. Right here, it's a breakout room. But the glass corners, you can always see kind of around that corner. So no, there's really no place to hide. So we're creatively utilizing the glass in that fashion here. So, and a few moments of benches, built-in benches for kids and visitors and parents to pause for a moment.
Mike.
Yeah.
The interior storefront, is that hollow metal or is it aluminum?
We have aluminum right now on these moments here. This obviously curtain wall, but once you get away from the exterior curtain wall, all these things here are 10-foot tall aluminum.
And then in the classroom wings, those are hollow metal? Okay.
Yeah, classrooms. Yeah, we're focusing on these kind of public spaces, picking our moments. This is really the portion of the building besides, once you're in the auditorium or the gym or the caf, that the community is going to see and use. And it's really, almost a community center kind of feel.
So it'll probably come up about it being aluminum, but just so that people in the community know, aluminum is better because you don't have to paint it over and over and over again.
Good ammo. Let me go back to the plan just to kind of finish up. Okay, so we talked about the steps and the ramps. We're going to eliminate those. I think the only thing that really has developed is the auditorium. It was agreed upon to increase the size of the auditorium, but that had some impacts. I think we shared an older graphic that kind of looked like this. It talked about an increase in overall gross square footage. I think it was around 1,700 square feet. This is the actual plan now. And so what you see in red is that the auditorium grew down, but it also grew lengthwise, which required us to push out the band and choral and all the other stuff. So we kind of reconfigured a portion of the building here. I think the auditorium stage was right size. I think it was a little small before. Now we made it the absolute right size. This corridor shifted over, but we still have a fantastic alignment with the gymnasium. We moved the toilet rooms in this location. We added a janitor's closet back in this location. So you still have dual access to the stage, to the platform from this corridor. Two restrooms, a janitor's closet, direct access from the auditorium storage. And we actually just had confirmation from the vendor that's the test fitting the seats. Notice you don't see any seats in here. And they just confirmed that we can get the 500 seats with this footprint. So now we'll double check that.
Are those a 19-inch?
We just received it before we came here today. So I think they're right size seats. So it's going to be a combination of seat sizes.
It's average.
Yeah. Average. It's an average size. So we'll get that, and we'll get once we get a more fine-tuned layout with handicapped seats and companion seats located in the right spots. We'll do a blow up of this and show you how that's working out. But the good news is that this box and this architecture can support the 500 seats.
And that ramp for the seats is going to be pitched in a way you don't need railings.
Correct. It's a 1 to 20 slope, which is the max you can do without any guardrails, and it works out perfectly that you're down around to 2'6" below, so that 30-inch threshold. It just happens to work out really nicely that we meet the criteria for a platform.
When you said that it was flush, what were you talking about? There's a 30-inch requirement, but you said it's actually flush.
Yep. Yep. So if you're walking around the school, you're all on the same level here. You're on the same level for the platform. There's an access way which takes you around here, so this is all on the same level.
I see.
Once you get, we should annotate this a little bit better. Once you get to this point, it slopes down.
So you're sloping down from
Sloping
the
into the
main floor.
Yeah.
You're getting,
And then the front of the platform right here, that's where you have a drop, the 2'6" drop.
I see.
So just imagine the seats all tilted
Yep.
towards the stage, towards the platform.
Yeah.
Very similar to what you have.
Low grade.
currently.
So, does the platform allow us that 30 inches? And in one of the schools, right, we were impressed by the understorage. I don't know if that was the Middletown one with the stage.
Middletown.
Would there be some ability to have some minimal amount of storage under
storage
there?
under the stage.
Put that underneath.
If you had a gymatorium or a
Yeah.
cafetorium and you needed space to put your folding seats,
Yeah.
in that circumstance, we would have chair carts that roll underneath. the
Right.
platform,
That's because I'm thinking, yeah,
but then it's
30.
gotta be sprinklered and all that other nonsense.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
and read it potentially.
Yep.
There's
Okay.
no trap doors in the stage.
No.
Yeah. Every all the seats will be fixed. You have nice adequate side stage.
okay.
Yeah,
Just so we know it's the platform, and so there's no
plenty of
storage on
archive
there.
storage. Yep.
That's kind of pain to use anyway.
Do we need to change the ed spec to say platform or stage? Does it matter?
No, it's a technical code. So on the documents, we'll call it a platform, because when the building inspector and fire marshal review it, it's a code term versus a stage.
Okay.
So for the ed spec, it's a
Sure, we don't
performance
have
area.
to change the ed spec.
Well, no actor ever disappeared behind the curtain to go back platform, to go backstage.
I'm dotting my i's and crossing my
Yeah,
t's.
no, it's a good question. So I mean,
By the way, Jack, you notice the sink?
Yeah, I just want to make sure when
Yeah, real
when the
time.
cost sheets come up and they talk about platform, they know they're talking about a stage.
Yeah.
Right, Jack? So when the cost sheets lay out a platform, that OSCGR knows that means the stage.
Well, they speak code a little bit up there. So
Okay. They speak that language. Okay. All right.
So that's it for the architecture update. And any other questions before we move on? Make sense? Okay.
Do you have what type of windows we're going to be using yet for venting? Or is that, we haven't gotten there yet?
We're not there yet. I think that
Are we using operable windows?
That's the other question, too.
That's a question.
Because you got fresh air.
yeah, we're currently showing operable windows.
Yes.
Sash, part of the sash. I haven't
Right.
seen the latest.
There is something,
Hey, Jack, can you get closer to your microphone? Thank you. Sorry. We're hard of hearing back here.
there is talk about requiring egress windows in classrooms, as an emergency measure, with different HVAC systems, especially like with chilled beams, which was one of the options that was discussed early on. You need to control the humidity, and having an open window in a classroom when the air conditioner is running, it could cause enough humidity to make it rain in the classroom.
Right.
That's a bad thing. So if you have operable windows, as a natural ventilation tool, you'd have to do certain things with the controls on your air conditioning system.
So what's the,
If we're looking at basically relying on the fresh air that the system is bringing in, and we're not planning on throwing the windows open wide on a nice spring day, we can consider them, inoperable except for, and we'll have to see whether we fall into that requirement yet, see what the legislation does, about requiring an escape window in every classroom. So that would be generally closed, but would be an opportunity to hop out the window in case there was an emergency. But we're seeing more and more schools built with inoperable windows because of the fact that they're fully climate controlled 12 months a year.
and that's got to be a cost savings, too, then, without.
The less sash that operate, the less cost the windows add. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also a psychological factor too. Being able to have fresh air, and often,
Yeah.
obviously, it's limited to a few inches. Sometimes they don't even have a handle. A janitor will have to come in and open a window upon request. But currently, I think we're looking at YKK, Conair, the big names as basis of design. And we'll share with you. Each classroom currently has, I think, a casement. We reduced it down to, I think it's 4x2, and two of them.
Yeah.
One on either
Casement,
side.
because casement windows
Yeah,
are.
casement. We can look at awning. Depends on. Yep.
I would definitely like to see awnings over casements, because over time, casements, they sag.
Yeah, we saw your comment.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it just becomes a nightmare down the road and becomes
Sure.
a big expense to fix them.
Yeah. So yeah, we'd love to continue the conversation. Whether they're in, they're out. Where are they? What kind of operating? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I also ask, you did say at some point each individual classroom would have its own climate control, is that correct? Because having taught at WIS, and I'm blaming you, Ken, they have the inoperable windows, and the south-facing side of the hallway, the rooms would be 85 degrees, and the north-facing, they would be 62 degrees, and we couldn't change that because of, I'm assuming you'll solve that problem, right, Ken?
Yeah, each
It wasn't me, it was CES.
Was it?
Can I ask a quick question
Doug's?
about the auditorium layout?
Sure.
For the sound booth, how is that? I'm just thinking about like folks operating the soundboard and being able to hear sound off the stage and vice versa, right from the monitor. So I'm not an architect. Is that a solid wall? How do they hear the stage?
You want to talk to you conversation with Dino?
The platform.
I'll
get that right
Yeah,
eventually.
so the control room will have an operable sliding window that they can open it up so they can hear into the auditorium directly.
Is it a fairly large window? Because I just know like at the high school it's fairly small and it's hard to
it
hear.
would be large enough that they could hear.
There's also
Okay.
product communication.
Yeah, and electronic communication as well. But yeah, the booth to be able to be open so they can actually hear inside
Are there
the
like
space.
standard sizes for those things these days?
We have to look into the exact size, but we'll review that with D'Agostino, who's our acoustic AV consultant.
Okay.
Okay.
So then just to recap the, I guess, prior slides, when you said the additional VM items, and a lot of them are still under review by PE, the idea would be you'd come back with those cost savings, and then we'd go through the same process maybe we did last meeting, where we'd say approve and in and out.
I think most of this is just part of taking the fat out of the design. They're just right-sizing the project, and these are things that naturally would have happened anyway. The one thing, the pop-ups, I when I first saw that, I was a little concerned, but I think the view Mike had shared, they probably really don't offer much, especially if you think about it. The north wing on the first floor, that wouldn't have any
It would've
clear
looked
story
like
glass.
this. Yep.
So now this is the view you're going to have in all three classroom wings.
Yes.
Oh, because the stairs were moved.
Well, the stairs were moved, and the first floor of the north wing wouldn't have had it anyway.
Right. That's where we would have put the 6th
The
grade.
only thing I think, Mike, you said you were going to look at this a little bit. They probably would have had to go away when CES starts adding all their ductwork.
We did have some discussions of how we were going to run the ductwork if
Yeah.
we had the pop-ups, and
The one thing I would just ask here is maybe pull that ceiling back a little bit and see if you can pop it up, the ceiling maybe a little higher and pulled back a little further from the glass.
Yep.
But beyond that, I think it looks good.
Okay.
So I think what they presented, all of it is going in the right direction.
Oh, it's all very valid to definitely look at, because it's just last time we were very intentional about combing through, and we said what's in, what's out. Are we now saying, well, whatever you guys can find, go forward with it, just keep us posted?
Well, I think
don't
maybe if somebody has a concern about what's been presented, they should just share it, and we can discuss it. But that's probably the best way to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective is that I don't know enough about architecture to know what I should challenge or not. So I'm kind of looking to you, Ken, to with your expertise.
Yeah, I think I don't have an issue with any of it. Lots of times when you get into value management, there's a point where you can cut too much. And my first glance when we had gotten the presentation early was that those pop-ups was cutting too much. But after walking through it and seeing these preliminary views, I think it's perfectly fine. A couple more little tweaks that'll make it even better.
Yeah, maybe that's maybe that one's easier because it doesn't have any functional impact. I just think about some of the floor finishes. I know in particular different middle schools, different maintenance people had different opinions on polished concrete versus rubber floors, and I know we're looking at you guys to make this building more than just functional, something that everyone's going to enjoy and be proud of, because I would think this thing was going to stand hopefully at least 70 years like the existing one is. So just making sure we're not doing things that are at all costs. Let's do things that are just the lowest cost, because the things that are, we want to escalate the things that are both big cost savings and minimize impact to functionality. So I just want to make sure as we get to the kind of the bottom parts of the list, we're really thinking hard about, okay, is it worth it for whatever, throw out there, $40,000 to put in manual roller shades instead of electric. Whatever it is, it could be just something that someone says, geez, they really cut corners on this one, and was it worth it? That's all.
Well, Matt, that's a perfect opportunity. You mentioned floor finishes. As far as bid alternates are concerned, we can go in with base bid as what can we live with, and then the alternate is what do we think would be best for the school, because certain floor finishes don't need to be stripped and waxed every year. That's an operational savings for the life of the building. You're going to spend a little bit more up front, but you're saving it twice every year for the rest of the building's life. So using articles like that as bid alternates is a very natural thing that we do when we've got these value management balancing acts.
Right.
And that way you make a concerted effort as to, well, yes, it's going to cost me $50,000 today, but it's going to save them $10,000 a year for the life of the building. yes, that's money well spent.
Yeah.
And you consider them point by point.
Yeah.
So, hey, Blaze, so you're looking at this view and you're used to being in the middle school. And
Well, in the
those
middle school
long-
now, it's the scary movie with the abandoned
so,
psychiatric
I mean,
hospital.
Like, do you see any? Do you have any concerns with just having the one window at the end of the hallway?
I think with the side window coming in on at least 2 of the floors, and I think with the bleed from, you should get some bleed from the from Main Street. I think we'll certainly be better than we are now. I think we can live with this, and the bright colors and the happy smiles on the kids' faces. I think all of that will add to it.
Not all that is guaranteed.
I think, and looking at the list, I would just want to consider the sunshades if there is an energy efficiency, benefit to those. I'm not saying we need to do a full life cycle cost. I don't know if that's something that can be added as a bid alternate, or if that's something that the committee would want to, consider. But in looking at the list, that's the only thing that I would kind of pause on.
Well, with all these options, you're going to come back at some point and tell us what the actual cost savings are for each one, right? In 2 weeks? Yeah. So we'll know if it's like worth the savings to.
Well, would part of it be incorporated into the
it'll
next
be incorporated
cost
into the
estimate?
DD.
Yeah,
At
that's
that point, then it's already baked in, right?
Well, we have enough data we can compare to. I've never put a sunshade in a building in my life, and I've been doing this since I was 19. I've never had a sunshade, an interior or exterior screen ever. One thing we incorporated on another project recently was we had a low E coating on the interior face of the glass. And while that low E coating was a pretty substantial increase for the glass, it actually allowed us to take radiation out of the building entirely. And that was an all-electric building. So I'm looking forward to that conversation coming up here soon.
Oh, we have a few more things to go through. Yes. So site plan update. So these are the value management items that we were accepted last time. So concrete sidewalks in lieu of pavers doesn't look any different here. Bleacher goals and benches, which will either be reused or part of FF&E. Landscaping was reduced by 20%. We'll look to see if we can reduce more based on zoning requirements. Removed center parking medians, so that would be in the grass strips that we're running east-west between these parking bays, so those were removed. The removed parking bay and drive aisle, that was here. That was also a topic of conversation yesterday.
Yeah, I was about to say, it sounds like the town didn't like that idea.
Right, so the town staff were concerned with the increased auditorium size, that reducing parking would be detrimental to the project, so that would be something that building committee should consider. And then fence in lieu of wall, this is back by the service area. One of the other items, and this is a big topic, was the elimination of the bend in the Park Road. So we have the next slide here. So the softball field service area realignment and adjustment is contingent on a couple of different items. So we are able to fit the softball field without realigning the road if we accommodate box trucks only in the service area. So we've heard that we only get track trail deliveries once per month, not every day, which was previously reported. So there are deliveries every day, but most of the times it's box truck is what our understanding is. So the tractor trailers would need to use the bus loop as they currently do. I'm going to just go back to the plan. So if they would come in through here or potentially through here, and they'd park here, and they would be able to access the building through this door here, which is on the opposite side of the door from the service area. So it's really not much of a difference of accessing the building.
And there's a walkthrough, right? Isn't there a walkthrough to get there anyway,
Yes.
so they can go
Do
straight
we have
directly in there?
I think if I go back to the plan, yeah. So the bus loop is right about. I keep hitting your water bottle. The bus loop is right about here, and there's a pathway that leads to these doors that would bring you right here. The service area is right in here. And then most of the box trucks would come here and deliver here and have direct access to the kitchen as well. So that would be the difference in having the tractor trailers drop off in the bus loop versus in the service drive. So I think that move allowed the softball field to shift south, and then we'd get a full-size field with the exception of 32 feet along the left field fence. That would be 174 feet to that corner, and then slightly closer to the 185. The landscape architect is suggesting that we use a 12-foot high section of fence along the road just to protect any cars driving in case a home run gets hit there. There would be a shortened outfield area. Would require a little shoulder on the road here that would be realigned, and then reduces the outdoor space of the cafeteria a little bit. So it's a almost 24-foot depth patio off the cafeteria. So it's a little smaller than it was. I'm not sure the exact
What was it before?
change. I'm not sure what it was before. Probably closer to 30 feet, probably. So it's probably 6 to 8 foot reduction. I could confirm that for you.
We can also expand it west to the left. You know,
Yeah,
there's nothing
but to
steep.
say we can
Yeah,
move it more
I
west.
think it did expand. Right, so the total savings, if you recall from the prior slides, to make these shifts is $500,000.
That's real money.
Yeah.
That's real money, yeah.
Is there any concern that that home plate is too close to the building? It might require a higher backstop or anything like that, which costs more money?
Didn't
No.
review that, but we could check.
You're close to the loading drive.
Okay.
But you're still a good distance away.
So you're not gonna have to build this monstrous backstop that's gonna cost.
Yeah, I mean, a home plate to the building, I mean, I'm not sure. This is 23 feet, so it's
You got
gotta
plenty
be
of room then, yeah. About 80 feet.
80 to 100 feet.
Okay.
That's a hell of a foul ball.
Is there any risk with cutting off the corner of the softball field there?
That's where the high fence has to go in.
Oh, yeah. They did it at Fenway Park.
I don't have good hand-to-eye coordination, so I did not play softball. I mean, are they typically, are the players hitting it out that far? Like, are we going to
I
limit
think
their
we
game?
might have this at the baseball fields already.
Okay.
Because there's a portion of those fields where there's a high fence.
Yeah. At
Yeah.
least there is,
At the
right?
Little League
Okay.
fields?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But we're not impacting the quality of their game.
No.
Yeah, you
Okay.
could actually see here that this outfield is truncated between the two fields.
Okay.
I like the green monster.
Yeah.
I'll buy those seats.
I'm a Yankees fan, but so maybe we can paint it red or
Can we
something.
reach out to Citgo to our sponsorship and a big sign?
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go. Pay for it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, do we need approval on that, or do you guys need to vote on this one, or?
That's a big one.
Yeah, let's vote on this one. I guess we're gonna vote on all of these concessions.
Was
is that
this,
right?
I think you mentioned you had met with the town, and this obviously impacts some of, I mean, I guess it impacts it less now because we're not moving there. I don't know if that's just something.
Was
that
this
needs to be-
presented to the town?
Yes.
And they were
Yep.
okay with it?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
They
And they
like the
knew
green
about the fence
monster as well.
option?
Yeah, they like the green monster as well.
Let's make it red.
All right, I guess I'll take a motion to approve the site plan change to accommodate the softball field as depicted on this slide.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Anyone abstaining? Okay, motion
Now,
passes.
similarly, last week, or last meeting, you talked about the reduction of parking out front. You know, that was an area that, we had some conversation with in the traffic report meeting. There was definitely a desire to see that come back.
Right.
Because even if we look at back-to-school night or parents' conferences, that kind of
That's
thing,
true.
there's never enough parking in a situation like that.
What was the
and-
cost savings for that?
120 or 125.
Oh, gosh, that's not.
And just conceptually, with $500,000 savings here, and we know that we can now reduce the underground portion of the stormwater detention, do some other savings there on
And the fire
site
pump thing.
utilities. And the fire pump, these are all things that are pushing it in the right way. it seemed like a very strong desire on the town's part.
I personally
I-
like to see more parking.
And after seeing their rendering at the meeting, that whole nice green space is going to be dirt and mud because they're just going to park there
They're gonna
anyway.
park right over, unless you put trees in every like
Even if
2
you put
feet.
there's trees now and they park in between the trees.
I know.
So I can't imagine that's going to look nice for even a hot minute, and we might as well pave it and make it functional.
I agree.
And it's paved today, so instead of tearing out stuff that you then would replace with topsoil, you're leaving the base there.
That's
and
true. How
just
much cost would that have
improving
been to
that,
tear
so-
everything up and fill it?
So that's, that, it's parking today, leave
Anyone,
it parking tomorrow.
Anyone have any opposing viewpoints you want to talk about? To putting the parking lot back in, or parking spaces back in? If not, I'll take. Oh, go ahead, Jessica.
I was just gonna say, put them in.
All right, I'll take a motion to change our prior decision of removing the parking bay and driving aisle and putting it back in.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ken. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All
Aye.
opposed, say nay. Anyone abstaining? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. That
Going
was
back to
good.
the softball field drawing, because you got it there. Is that the bench area? This is like a gray rectangle.
Here?
Is that the bench? Yeah. Would that be the bench area?
I think that's,
Oh, no, wait,
Dugout?
Bleacher, that's a,
Oh,
I think it's
bleacher.
a bleacher.
yeah, I don't,
Okay.
The dugout is there.
I think that's the bench there,
That's
maybe.
the bench, and then there's.
Did we
Dugouts
take
and
out
we-
the bleachers though from the? Was that cost
we,
savings?
We took that out from the soccer field
Oh,
to
just
either
soccer field.
reuse
Okay.
or shift it to FF&E.
So I don't think we have that for softball. Field.
Well, that's what I'm just asking. I just want to make sure. It seems like we're very nooked in there.
Yeah.
So if there's any room for error, like
It
we
might be
didn't
the
think about where
dugout.
the dugout's going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the, right.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah.
Base coach?
We do have dugouts here too, right?
I don't think so. I don't know.
At the softball field, and
So the baseball field right next door has a dugout.
right.
We're gonna have to have a dugout for the girls softball field.
Yeah, I thought it was. I remember a conversation where that someone
Yeah.
had said like if we're redoing the field,
Yeah,
we have to
it would be a
put-
Title IX issue if we didn't do it.
Yeah.
And structure on grade.
Yeah, just be a structure on grade.
Not a
Yeah, not below grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll let Rick DeSiga know and we'll make the adjustment.
Yep.
So my point was just in this sketch is, if that rectangle is there, it seems like it's kind of abutting the. Is it basically kind of abutting the roadway?
It's whoops. So the service is here. There'd be the fenced stockade fence here,
Okay.
and then there's an accessible sidewalk in this location.
Okay, so it's
And there's plenty of green there.
I think it looks a lot smaller than it really is going to
Maybe,
be. It's
yeah,
just
I
very
can't tell the
condensed with a
scale.
lot of lines
Okay.
and
Yeah, I just-
dashes and
yeah.
markings.
Yep.
And overlays.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go back to the full site plan again?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we weren't.
Yeah.
I mean, if something happens and we find out we need an extra couple feet, I guess that just becomes instead of a 12-foot fence, a 15-foot fence, right? At the end.
Along the Board of Ed, like I'm just thinking as students are like exiting the gym and getting to the fields for like PE class, that's a road there, or that has to be a road, right? That's not a sidewalk. Is it?
Yes.
Is it? You know,
So they could access. Yeah, they could access.
I guess yeah, where the
the
access
fields. If they left the gym, they could access it from here or from here and along to here to get to the soccer field.
Yep.
There's also a sidewalk that wraps around to the back fields.
Do
They
they
could
use
also-
the
they-
fields in the classroom? Do they go out and like play soccer during gym?
Yes.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Oh.
The other access to the gym, they could access, leave the gym through Main Street and access the fields this way
Oh, okay.
and avoid the service area completely.
That's
Yeah, it's
not
hard
the
to see.
modified service area,
No,
right?
that's that was the
yeah.
old one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure.
Okay.
Yeah. It's,
Do you have
it's
this aerial view of the service?
Not with the new.
Okay. just curious what it looks like.
We could send that for next time.
I'm just curious. Very good.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
All right.
Another
it's
heavy
your turn.
topic.
So this was kind of billed as sustainability, which it is, but it's also more. The last time we met and talked about HVAC, we looked at 3 options and kind of settled on the option that we presented in the SD set and cost estimated, which was VRF, which is that all-electric heating and cooling system individually in all of the classrooms, coupled with a dedicated outdoor air system, so that's dedicated ventilation air to all the spaces. We have the big air handling units for the auditorium, cafeteria, and gym. The key that came out of that is that it seemed like everyone liked the idea of having gas in the building as part of the heating system, so it wasn't completely electric. And so as part of that system, we had a gas boiler plant similar to what you have in the middle school now, just a much newer, better one. And that was supplying hot water to all the air handling units, so bringing in ventilation air, heating that up with hot water. All the large air handling units, those would have hot water coils in them. The VRF, all the units in the classroom would still just be that all-electric system. And again, we were talking about perimeter heat, radiant panels or something. And so the plan, the SD design, again, with a very good envelope, we don't need the perimeter heat. So the hot water currently does not go to the perimeter of all the classrooms. We're just relying on the electric heat pumps to do that in the classroom wings. So when we got the cost estimate and we're looking at value management options, one of the ideas I put out there, which we have done before in other schools, is get rid of the boiler plant, but not get rid of the gas. And we'll get into the detail in a second. I'll show the graphic of one versus the other. But so as we talk about that, it's really a proposed option that saves a lot of upfront cost, but there's some considerations that I'll talk through. And just to kind of rehash, what's important for this school, many schools, but just the unique considerations here. This is an all-new building. We have an all-new envelope. That means less energy to heat it. We have to be less concerned about having heat at the perimeter, for example. We do want to maintain gas as a heating source, and that's not only a familiarity, that's also when power fails and we need to back up the building with a generator, it's a much smaller generator to do that versus if it truly was an all-electric building and we had to back it up in a power outage, much larger generator, 3 to 4 times the size of what we would have now. And of course, first cost and budget is important. Total energy, so we have kind of a very early look at just what, of these 2 options we're looking at now, what the energy picture looks like. And again, it's a moving target right now, and usage is a huge factor. But we have some idea of what that would be. And then there was some talk about, if we get into this meeting, just the existing solar panels on the school. We talked about it a little bit last time. We can touch on it again.
What's LCCA?
Oh, great question. Life cycle cost analysis. So that basically says how much do you pay up front for it to install it? How much does it cost to operate it, maintain it? And, we look at typically a 20-year window. We go out to 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. The school is going to be around hopefully 50 to 100. But again, even if it's something that, and you'll see, if there's an option that does pay back over time, it still hits the budget day one. And if there's a big concern with that and we want to reduce the money, then that's something to think about. So here are the 2 options. Option 1 is the base. This is what we had during schematic design. So this is what was in the cost estimate. Again, that's that VRF heating and cooling. For those of you looking ahead, anything in red is kind of the difference between the 2. So the major difference with option 2, it's essentially the exact same system in a lot of ways. It's just we're getting rid of the boilers. And what that means, there's no boilers, there's no pumps, there's no hot water piping running throughout the building. And what that means is to get heat in the large air handling units, instead of hot water coils that have water running through them, it's a gas furnace. So we bring the gas piping up to the roof directly to each of those large units, and there's a gas furnace like you might have in your house, a little gas furnace in your closet somewhere in your basement, just on a bigger scale. And so that's what we'll be doing the heating.
I'm sorry, Eric. Are these 2 options within the option we already chose, or are these like going back to reopening the last discussion that we had?
This is not reopening the last discussion. This option 2 is now kind of like a slightly different way. Yeah, I should number them.
Okay, so it's like a hybrid.
Yeah, 1A, 1B, yes.
I see. Okay,
so
thank you.
Yeah, make that a mental note that it's 1A and 1B. Another key difference, if we don't have, so again, the benefit of hot water is, there are spaces that we have heat but no cooling. So like vestibules, we don't provide cooling in a vestibule, but we have to heat it. Back of house spaces like an electrical room, mechanical room doesn't need air conditioning. Other kind of like little ancillary spaces. With option 1A, I'll say, sorry? Stairwells, yes, thank you. Hot water is nice. You have a hot water cabinet unit heater, something in the ceiling, something in the wall that provides heat with hot water. It's very efficient, easy to control. With option 1A, if the hot water is not there, the only option we have is just an electric cabinet unit heater. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with those, but they're using electricity now, so it's a higher electricity. They're not heat pumps, so they're not running as efficiently as, for instance, the VRF system. So there's a little bit higher operating cost there, and you could say they don't last as long, but that's debatable. So really the takeaways are 1A, it is more expensive. The whole point of option 1B is that it is less expensive. But the benefits of 1A, we have better control over the hot water with what it does, so how much heat we're delivering. We can modulate it more accurately. It's a nicer tried and true. We've been using hot water for a long time to heat buildings. It's also more efficient, so it uses the gas that we're coming into the building in a more efficient manner to heat. So those are the benefits. And the drawbacks that are related to that, the gas furnaces, they do have the ability to modulate and turn down, but they're usually in steps, so like 10 steps of capacity, if you will, where hot water is essentially infinite in a lot of ways, and then they're a little bit less efficient. So really the benefit in my mind to 1B is just it's cheaper to build. 1A is a nicer system, but there's a cost associated with it. And just to kind of help just understand visually what this all looks like, there's a lot going on here. I tried to keep this relatively simple, and I'm just going to quickly flip back and forth a couple times so you can just kind of see what's changing on the picture, and then I'll show what this is. So all the yellow boxes you're seeing are all of those, and again, there's one that I think went away that's still on here. These are all of those big rooftop units that are providing ventilation air to the classrooms, and then the heating and cooling and ventilation to all of the big spaces. In option 1A, you see the 2 red lines going to all of them. That's hot water piping, and you see the little, here's my laser. These are your gas boilers in the mechanical room and the pumps. So we're taking gas coming in to the mechanical room, hitting the boilers, burning the gas as efficiently as possible up in the 90+%, and then sending hot water to all of these units and to the entryways. I only showed one here as an example, but you imagine every stairwell has one of these. So there's kind of hot water going all throughout the school. Another benefit of that is it's flexible. If you need to add or remove things, it's much easier to just kind of tap off that hot water system and use that efficiency. So then in this system, the boilers are now missing. That's your cost savings. The hot water is missing. This gas piping is now coming in and going to all of these rooftop units, and we're just using the gas, burning the gas directly in each of these units to provide the heat. So it's less expensive, but in my mind, if it were my building, I would rather have the base option, which is hot water. But there's I forget what the final number is, but it's give or take $400,000. Yeah, good question. So when we're on the emergency generator, yeah, so Joe just asked me to explain the difference between these two options when power fails and we're running on the generator. And so really we're just trying to keep the building warm. The understanding in this school, in large part, if there's an extended outage and it's cold, students are likely going to go home. We're just now trying to keep the building from freezing. So in an outage, the generator is going to back up, in this option, the boilers, the pumps, all the things that make the hot water system work, which is a relatively small load. And it's also going to back up all of these yellow boxes. But what it's going to do is just back up the fan, essentially, that's moving air, which is a load, but it's not as big as there's a bunch of compressors in there that do air conditioning. The air conditioning is a much bigger load. We're not worrying about that. So that generator powers the boilers, the pumps, the fans, and then the gas furnace really, just like a boiler, doesn't have a lot of power associated with it as long as the gas is going to it. In this option, pretty much the same thing happens. We just don't have the boilers, so there is a little bit less power to back up. we still have to back up all the fans in these units and the controls. So that's really the major difference there is when we're running on generator, you don't have to power the boilers, but again, the boiler plant kind of fits within the margin of error of the generator size, if you will. Like we're not significantly upsizing our generator to be able to power the boilers in this option.
Do you have the life cycle cost differences?
Yes. Sorry, getting there.
If we're using electric heaters for ancillary spaces and stairwells, and we're fully sprinklered, do we have to run those electric heaters on
Yes.
generator?
Yes. Good question. Yes. And those are, is that what you were driving at? Yeah. Yeah, those will. I mean, those are not massive, but you're right. There are all these little, vestibules, stairwells. Those would need to be on generator power as well. So that would probably offset, be a little bit more than the boilers. So here's my, and these colors get really weird on this thing. So the mostly electric boilers, that's our base. The mostly electric with gas furnaces as the VE option. So the first cost, this is $400,000 more, roughly. This is the lowest cost. I have these in kind of relative terms here because the energy modeling is still very much a moving target. So annual energy use, this is using, this is using the lowest energy. This is using a little more energy, again, because the furnaces are not as efficient, and you also have electric heaters now. And then the energy cost, again, this is the lowest energy cost of the two. This option, again, this seems kind of like a big range, and it is. There's a lot of factors in here now. Usage, the way that you use the building has a big part to play in this. But, even within this range, whether it's $4,000 or $12,000 more a year to run this system, the payback, the point I'm trying to make here, and this is what we typically see with this analysis, this is a small enough change that the financial payback of these two options, in my mind, would not make the decision. It's really is it worth it to pay a little more for the nicer system, the better efficiency, the flexibility of being able to add or remove heating devices that use hot water or don't use hot water, the controllability and the maintenance. And again, hot water systems are something that, staff are all very familiar with maintaining and
What's
using. So.
the difference in cost for the generator that would be needed for one versus two?
I think you need a generator either way, right?
You need a
but
generator
you
either way.
need
And
size, but you need a bigger one for.
Oh, I'm sorry. No,
Correct?
the 3 to 4 times bigger was, so both of these are called, I'm calling them mostly electric. The all electric option is out. I mean, we're not considering that anymore. This.
To delete the gas entirely would be 4 times the generator size.
Yes.
So we're still keeping gas. It's just a matter of using the boilers or not.
So the question is
So
the
this-
generator size the same between 1A and 1B?
Right.
Or
Yes.
is it different?
It's the same size.
It's the same.
Yes, it's the same
Okay.
size.
And then what was the escalation rate that you used for the annual energy cost in terms of like electricity and gas rates?
Good question. I mean, it's we guess at it, but we typically use 3% for each, and it's been wild. But I mean, so we can put anything we want on it. I mean, if one's going to get more or less expensive, maybe it's going to be 9% next year. I mean, to keep it consistent, no one can.
Like cost
There's no
of
crystal
gas,
ball.
like trying to catch up with electricity. And then did you take, I don't know if any of those like Eversource programs or federal whatever programs,
Or the Inflation Reduction Act?
Inflation Reduction Act, any of that stuff get factored into the life cycle costs or?
For this, no. But we don't know enough detail about the energy model of this option versus the energy model of this option will be different. That's, there's an efficiency difference. That efficiency difference may get you more money from, say, Eversource with this option, but it may not, because there's like buckets of percentage ranges that you fall into. So you may very well get more dollars for this option, but we won't know until we kind of go through that
You have a higher
process.
chance of getting more money from one versus two?
Yes, because it's more efficient. And then I just kind of left this. These are just
What does WIS have? Because that electricity bill is through the roof, right, Dr. Macri?
No solar panels either.
And they have no solar panels either, yeah.
Yeah.
one factor in looking at whether you're burning gas on the roof or burning gas in a boiler room is that if you've got the boiler room and you've got 3 boilers, you service 3 combustion appliances. When you're up on the roof, I think our current count is like 9 of the units would have to be serviced as far as
Right.
you're burning gas 9 times in 9 places instead of in 3 boilers.
What-
So there may be some, maintenance and operation cost, labor cost.
The life expectancy of the ones that are on the roof versus the ones that are in the plant.
Right. Like
Great
the-
question. Thank you. That was one of the other points I was going to make. The life expectancy of the rooftop units here with hot water and hot water coils is longer than the hot water coils. Water running through a coil inside of a unit on the roof is going to generally last longer than a gas furnace in an outdoor unit. That
By how much would you say?
it's a guess 10 years.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Gas furnace, packaged unit is what, 15 years?
Well, that impacts that life cycle cost too, right? So you're thinking 33 to 100 to
So you have to
100
add
years
into that life cycle
payback.
cost, the cost of replacing these units
Yeah.
And there's
and
9 of
increased
them,
maintenance.
Right, there's 9, you said?
Yeah, and you wouldn't replace the entire unit. These are bigger than like a kind of a small package unit that you would like just replace the whole thing. You would replace the furnace within the unit.
That's
But yeah, there is
the
there
most
is a cost to it.
expensive part probably in the unit you'd have to replace, right? I'm guessing the furnace.
Not the
is
most, but it is. So the compressors are the most important.
And then when
most
they break
yeah.
and there's no longer
Compressors.
replacements for it. 'Cause
Oh my gosh, I know.
Yeah, in the hot water, and going back to the, we talked about very early on is we have gas boilers now. There is technology out there. It's still relatively new. It's more proven in Europe, but you can make hot water with essentially a big fancy electric heat pump. So it's an electric only thing that makes hot water. That's eventually going to come here. In 10 years, we're going to be putting those in schools. They're just not here yet in the cost, diversity of manufacturers. So you could in 10, 20 years rip these out, put in this new system, and then your hot water piping is all sized to handle hot water just made from a different source. So with this option, if you have gas going everywhere, you can't do that.
I just feel like we can't,
There's like a lot of risk, it seems like, with option 2.
to me, there's a lot of risk. And if we go with this option, there's never going back.
Yeah.
You're
stuck with it.
You are stuck till this building comes down 482 years later.
Well, not that you're stuck, but that you would have to install new infrastructure if you wanted to change your direction.
Yeah, it'd be
The-
significant cost.
This last conversation about the heat pump hot water makers was had in another CES project, different engineer, but same logic, in that if you've got that infrastructure to move the hot water around and you change the source, because this other client had as one of their goals, if we can afford it at all, we want to be a fossil fuel free. I mean, all of their cooking appliances in the kitchen are 100% electric. So they've taken that step already. But they said, well, what do we do about our heating system? And then the conversation turned in this direction, that once the technology is mature enough and affordable enough here, that you can take out that boiler, turn off the gas, and install the heat pump hot water maker, and then totally electrify your building. And ultimately, that was their decision.
Yeah.
And at a macro level, what Jack just described, that's what lots of different clients are doing elsewhere. And Yale is down the street from our office, and I try to follow what they're doing, sustainability. They have steam piping all over campus, huge steam plants, hot water piping. This is exactly what they're doing is using, it's a big long plane, but using that existing piping and infrastructure, creating hot water with heat pumps electrically, and then backfeeding all of that stuff. And it's doable. They don't have to tear apart every single building to convert everything to all electric.
So we already chose option 1, right?
Yeah.
That's
So
our
this
base.
this is in the base price as part of the proposed VM that we're reviewing now. This again, it's just we throw as many ideas out there that we think are workable and test it out and see what people think about it. But there is some definite drawbacks to it. It's not just the first cost.
I would need a motion to change it if someone really wants to go to option 2. Otherwise, we can move on.
Oh, so I didn't realize then. Yeah, option 1 is you're saying that's what's based in the schematic design.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, because I know we were talking about if we moved to fully electric, that would be cheaper, and I thought this was a halfway point between what we had and full electric. But okay, no,
This is not all electric.
this is not all.
We'll
electric,
use
right?
gas either way. It's just a matter if you're gonna
Yeah.
use these boilers or go
It,
directly to
it,
the
sound, it
unit.
sounded like if we went fully electric, that the generator would made it cost prohibitive.
Oh yeah.
Very too expensive.
And the cost of all these yellow boxes on the fully all electric, these yellow boxes all get a little more expensive.
Yeah.
So there would be an ultimate savings, I think, but not 400,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. Leave
All
it
right.
alone.
I hear no motions. Once, twice. All right, move on.
All right.
So we met yesterday and presented the traffic study and the recommendations from SLR to the town staff. There was 2 recommendations for the main entry to go to a all-way stop, which would be a permanent 24/7 measure to mitigate the sightline issues at the main entry. The other option would be to go to school zoning and flashing lights to warn in both directions. Some of that would be part of the first option. And both options require some off-site work to shave down the shoulder to improve the sight line right at the main drive. I could just show you quick where that would be. If I could get back there. So most of that work would be here and in the right-of-way coming up to this. The hill, the road, Gear Street slopes up slightly. That makes the sight line issue. So once we presented the 2 options to the town staff, they felt that the 4-way stop was the better option because it provides 24/7 mitigation to the sightline issue. So I don't know if we need to vote on that or if we just move forward with that
The
recommendation.
chief of police was in that meeting and she
Yes.
concurred. I mean,
Mhm.
that's really their decision what they want
Okay.
in terms of that. That they have to make the decision how to handle it.
Where does that, what, I have to ask the budget question. Does that hit our budget, those changes?
Yes.
But I think it should be minor, right? Because you're talking about like painting the road and a couple of stops. It's probably the cheapest option as opposed
It
to
is
putting
the-
a light in there.
Yes, definitely the cheapest option. I forget what Mike said.
And you're gonna have to put like crosswalks, right? And,
They
and a
mentioned a
handicap
crosswalk.
curb
Yeah.
on the other side.
They did ask for a crosswalk across Gear Street. They did say that we would likely have to do a curb ramp, handicap ramp
Yeah.
at that crosswalk.
That should be like
But the
minor.
cost of signage, the stops, the stop signs, the stop sign ahead warning signs up the street from where the stop signs would occur. There would be some temporary electronic signs that go in, like for the first month after the sign goes up to let people know so they're not surprised. And then there's the cost of the shoulder modification. And the shoulder modification, I think the traffic engineer says, well, closer to 10 than 50 as far as cost, is closer to 10,000. So it's not a large earth-moving effort,
Yeah.
but it is outside of the property line. So whether it's the signs or the shoulder amendment, those would be ineligible for state reimbursement.
Okay.
But overall,
Either way, towns have to pay for it.
order of magnitude, the
Right.
project, the project needs it in order to improve the conditions to make, we're doing something different. We're changing things with a new building,
Right.
even though that is a driveway today.
Right.
But it's probably order of magnitude, maybe in the $25,000 range,
Okay.
which would all fall on the town side of the ledger.
It would be nice if the town handled those expenses, since they are not eligible, and it's really part of the road system. It would be nice if we could convince the local DOT
I mean,
or whatever that department is.
Either way, the town's gonna have to pay for it,
Yeah.
whether it's on our bill of material theirs, like it's.
Right, my point is, I'd like to conserve our funds for the building and the site
Right.
and have the
But
town
with our next
handle-
cost estimate, we're just gonna be adding it on anyway, right?
I guess.
So, there you go.
Well, that's the question. Is it included in the design
It's not.
development cost estimate, or is it going to
Oh, I don't know.
hit the town budget? I think that's the question we have to.
Did we include that kind of work in our original site costs?
It would be an additional cost.
It would be additional, yeah.
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 I don't think we ever thought about affecting Gear Street at all.
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying. So now are we absorbing that as part of our budget, or does that go to the town's budget?
It's part of making the project work.
Yeah.
So it hits the project budget.
Be nice if they paid for it, though.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Truth.
You know, it doesn't hurt to ask. You know, now's the time to.
I wouldn't count on it.
No.
Yeah, no.
So, yeah, just remind me again,
Pick
what,
our
if,
battles.
if we weren't doing anything, is it just because we're creating more parking spaces in there? What's?
Nope.
No, that has
So if the traffic study was done independently,
the
right?
Because
So
the
the-
traffic study showed that there was a sightline issue
Right.
coming
So we
out of
have
the
to put
school
stop
and going
signs
left.
there.
So
But what if we weren't going forward with the project anymore? There's still a sightline issue, right?
Yeah. So they could have done nothing. They could have said, well, we've had no accidents in that
Yeah.
intersection this whole time. We don't really need to do anything anymore. But they can't ignore the traffic study, which says you should put something there. So now that you opened up that door, you can't really go back through it again.
If I remember correctly, right after WIS opened, they shaved the top of that hill and widened the road because of worries about bus issues.
Yeah.
I'd like to know if that came from the WIS budget. I think it was a couple years later. So
Probably
that
not,
actually
'cause it's
came
probably
from the
on the
town.
property line.
It probably came from the town, but it was because of the buses coming down Gear Street.
I just don't, I wouldn't expect the town to pay for it now. That's
I
my-
just don't know if that's a battle we want to pick.
It's gonna be in our budget. I mean, either way.
What's the magnitude here is we're sub 100,000 or
Hopefully 25
Like 25,000?
yeah.
or less.
Yeah. Let's cross that bridge when we get to it.
If this had to go back out to referendum, and, which is likely, right?
Yeah,
Voters aren't gonna turn it down because of $25,000.
right, they're not. It's a drop in the big bucket that we're dealing with. Okay. Are we still maintaining the schedule with all of our hiccups and our tactical pauses and everything? Okay. That's great.
We've got the estimators and other people lined up for the end of the month, so we have to hit that deadline.
So, when you get into the construction document phase, is that when we get into like the nitty gritty of like material selection and everything, or does that happen before that?
Yeah, we would, at this stage, be looking into construction documents to get into the actual materials and presentation, interior finishes, exterior samples, and we'll present that as early as possible in CDs
Okay.
to incorporate into the documents.
All right.
Assuming that we have finishes.
Okay.
All right, so since the last meeting, we've issued the geotech report. We met with town staff yesterday to review the traffic report. We met today with the educators to give them an update on the building design and plan. We also had an AV meeting that was also today that go over the classroom AV and the AV in the cafeteria, auditorium, gymnasium. So I'll issue minutes on that meeting. Tomorrow morning, we have the commissioning agent kickoff meeting. We have the security meeting, which will be on 2/23 next Thursday, and a technology meeting to be determined. It's going to be mid-March. And once we finalize the site plan and the building plan, which we're very close on, we'll have a meeting with the local authorities having jurisdiction to review the project with them.
Okay. And the geotech report, again, no issues found, like kind of what we expected.
Yeah, no issues found. So,
And when do we actually
Is
do? I'm sorry. When do we actually do the environmental review of the current? Like when do they dig in the dirt to see what kind of contaminants or whatever they're dealing with?
So we'll have to discuss that. So I've had a conversation with Jim Twitchell, who's our environmental consultant. Basically, what he said is if we have zero export from the site, then we don't have to consider that. But I'll have to confirm that with him, and I'll have a discussion with you and Jack following up with that.
Okay.
So is this geotech report different than the environment report on the agenda?
Yes. So the geotech report basically tells you what the soil is made up of and its bearing capacity. The one thing to note in the report is that there's portions of the site where the water table is slightly elevated. It's about 4 feet below grade. While that shouldn't be an issue for our building, it could be an issue during construction and might require some dewatering.
Okay. And would that geotech report look for things like ledge? Not that we have ledge here, but would it look for that kind of thing too?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the deepest boring went down 27 feet and they didn't find anything, so they stopped.
Well, how deep do they have to go for the auditorium?
30 inches.
Plus
And then the
40,
depth of the footings.
Yeah,
So the,
4 feet.
42 inches for the depth of footings.
Okay.
Next steps, so continue with design development to wrap up the package, which will be on 3/3. We just confirmed the community information meeting. Planning and zoning submission dates still to be determined will be post the design development. And that's what we have for tonight.
Any questions?
Was there anything of value from today's meeting? Because I wasn't able to attend from today's meeting with
Sorry.
with some of the Board of Ed folks. Is there anything
For the
for the
AV
planning? Yeah, for the planning meeting. I don't know if there was anything about you or Ken. If there was anything.
There was relatively minor adjustments, location of a refrigerator, just simple things like that. There was no structural changes, no change of scope or anything like that. It was just clarification on certain areas and basically making sure the staff was comfortable with where they were at with everything.
Thanks, Ken.
Refinements.
Before we move off from architect stuff, just going back to cost estimation type things, Ken, do you have like a summary of what your findings were as far as the original cost estimation and things that went awry that we need to be mindful of?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay, so Tom from PAX was able to share 3 versions of his conceptual design estimate with us. The first version that he shared, the project cost was roughly $74 million. After
This is concept design only,
This is
right?
concept design only. The second version was about $62 million, and then the final one was 51. So that's a pretty big swing, $23 million change. And the other thing that he had shared was also some email correspondence that he had with both the architect and the project manager. The common takeaway based on the email was that that they were they really needed to confirm the gross building area and review the escalation. Combined with that, we had seen some feedback where they had reduced unit costs, and while I don't necessarily disagree with what they did, they had reduced building costs based on bids that they had been seeing at the time. And they figured the escalation factor would take into account anything that would change for the future. The problem with the escalation factor was that in the initial estimate where it was $74 million, they had counted on an 18% escalation. So that would have been 6% for 3 years to take us to when the building was complete. That contingency was lowered down to 10% in the second version of the estimate. And then in the final one that everybody had saw and was submitted to the state, the escalation factor was lowered down to 6%. Other contingencies that were lowered was the design contingency. It was lowered from 10% in the initial one down to 7.5%, which I think was really aggressive, considering the drawings that they were estimating were single line drawings, At least that's what those are the only ones we'd seen, and there was just too many unknowns at the time. Really, they should have kept a 10% design contingency factor, or even I've seen it as high as 15% that early. The other thing that I thought was kind of striking was the construction contingency on all three of that versions of that estimate was 2.5%. Industry standard is 3%, and in the current schematic design estimate that we have, it's been corrected to 3%. Probably, I think that the biggest mistake, in addition to the changes in the escalation, was the estimator had calculated the building. This is including the middle school and the central office. He calculated the gross building area as 99,903 square feet. So these were takeoffs that he had done on the plans. And just to clarify gross building area, there's lots of different definitions of gross building area, and the building code gross building area is inside face of exterior walls, but when an estimator is doing takeoffs, they always go to the outside face of the exterior walls. So there was discussion about correcting what the gross building area was, and the square foot number that was provided with him was 88. Well, it was slightly more than 88,903 square feet, but in the final estimate, they had matched the gross building area that was included in the educational specs. The educational specs specifically state that total gross building area did not include exterior walls. So I think right off the bat, that area that was missing for the exterior walls, that was probably about a $5 to $6 million bust. On top of that, there were 7-figure changes in hazardous abatement, structural steel, membrane roofing, operable partitions, and then plumbing, HVAC, and electrical combined to about a 7-figure reduction. And then there was also reductions in site work. Again, these reductions, they were basing on bids that they were seeing at the time, and they figured the escalation factor would take into account anything, any volatility that we'd see. However, reducing the escalation to 6% for 1 year was, in hindsight, a bad idea. So my takeaways from this is I think from in the next round of estimates that we have, we need to have meeting minutes for what was decided in those reconciliation meetings. The previous architect and project manager talked about reducing scope that wasn't approved by the building committee. And while I think their intentions were good, it should have been reviewed with us. As we've said all along, we like to be honest with each other, and we're fully transparent. So the next time you do have that reconciliation on the design development estimate, either we should participate, or, and I think probably or, we should have minutes about what was discussed in that meeting. So that was my takeaway.
Thanks, Ken. Anyone have any questions?
No, just thanks for doing that assessment.
Yeah.
I have architect questions overall on the presentation.
Mhm.
Are you ready for that? Okay. One question, so I saw in there that we're not submitting to planning and zoning until after design development, but there's going to be items in design development that have been saying like, oh, but we need planning and zoning to approve these, like the roof screens and the planting. So how does...
What's the timing for all that?
Yeah, like we're a little out of order. So like, are we gonna, when we get the design development estimate, will those reductions be in there with a risk associated with them? Because planning and zoning might say no. How do we think about that?
Or do you just want to plan to go to the next planning and zoning meeting?
I'll jump in the middle of that one.
Yeah.
And
Thanks, Jack.
even though the question wasn't directed at my,
It was directed to the
team.
to the
team.
corner of experts over here.
So in order to go to planning and zoning, we need a set of documents that's developed far enough for them to clearly understand the overall, and where the intent is. I think for estimating purposes, for the DD estimate, we'll go with the revised design assumptions that were discussed tonight. When we get to planning and zoning, we're going to discuss reducing the amount of roof screening. We're going to discuss plantings in the parking lot, plantings on the site, as a total. We're going to discuss those things in order to write. So it's clearly public knowledge that this project has challenges financially. And I would hope that the commissioners are open to that discussion of looking at what is the right solution for this building in this location at this time, rather than saying, well, we've got a paragraph that says 699 trees, you've got 698, go try again. I hope that they'll be open to that discussion and find out what's really the best balance for the needs of the town.
Yeah,
So
that
we'll
makes sense.
estimate it and then hopefully be able to, with unit costs available through the estimate, if we need 20 trees less, we'll be able to figure out what 20 trees saved us.
Okay.
In addition to what Jack just said, we also do plan on having conversations, not actual submissions with the staff, but we do plan on talking to them about our plans and some of the adjustments we have to make that will be reviewed by planning and zoning. So by the time we walk into the room with our formal presentation, they will have already seen versions of the site plan.
Can you clarify what you mean versus staff versus like our planning and zoning elected officials you'll have those conversations with?
Yeah, the staff usually guides the commission regarding the regulations and what projects are doing. So we'll have conversations with that person.
With Stu, the
with,
town planner.
With Stu and others, and make sure that they understand what our intent is. And if we get oppositions, we'll come back to the committee and explain that and maybe have to make an adjustment to the plan. But the intent is to keep that communication open. There's not going to be any secrets, and we certainly don't want any surprises when we actually do submit our planning and zoning formal package.
Yep. Okay. My next question was, Eric had talked about the plan for existing solar panels, but I did not see that in the presentation.
Yeah, good question. It was not in the presentation. It came up, I think, last time we talked about the HVAC. So there are solar panels on the existing middle school. They are, I forgot the year that they were installed. The short story is our new school has to meet the state standard of a 20-year useful life for all of the mechanical and electrical equipment. The panels and inverters are old enough that they can't be reused on the new school. The panels themselves have life left in them. They could be moved to another school. You have other schools that don't have solar panels on the roof, so you could put them on another school or another town building, but they can't go on our building because everything on our building has to have that certified 20-year life. So the panels themselves, I think, if I remember correctly, have maybe 10 to 15 years of life left. Yep. The inverters, however, and the inverters are the things that take the power and convert it and make it actually connect with the grid. The inverters are nearing the end of their life. So if you did move them, and it's actually kind of good timing, you could move them anytime before you demo the school, move them to another location, buy new inverters. And this is a system that you own. It's not something through a power purchase agreement. So that would be outside of this project, but that, as a if I
That
were a
might be a
member of
good
the town,
option
that
for
would be-
WIS, cut down some electricity costs over there.
So is that a Board of Ed decision?
Yeah, sounds
or-
like that's a Board of Ed decision.
Okay.
What to do with them at least.
We are
Okay.
providing the infrastructure.
Yes, and so for the new school, we are providing the infrastructure for new
For
solar panels, but the panels themselves are not in the budget.
Okay.
Right.
And then I saw on our agenda that we are going to discuss the Eversource options and then have a possible action to proceed with one of the options. I think that has to be decided before design development ends.
I thought one of them had to.
I think
Yes, you're right.
I think it was talked about at the last meeting that the call with Eversource had taken place, that essentially an expression of interest in participating in their program needs to be made before the end of DD in order to capture the greatest contribution.
So who's going to provide that letter?
So I think typically we work through the design engineer, who interface with Eversource, on that to say yes. And so if we just, nod in consensus tonight that yes, we want to pick up free money,
Yeah.
then, that gives them the green light to, to make whatever.
Would that be Eric? Would that be from you?
Communications with them.
Yeah, it could be me. So it could be any one of us that says, yes, we would like to pursue path 2, which is the energy modeling path. Which
I was going
will-
to say you had to pick a path though, so I don't.
Path 2 would be the one applicable to us?
Path 2 is the one. And actually, it's not as, if you pick path 1 or path 2 and you go through the modeling and you get what you get, you're not locked into
Okay,
you're
because
not
it's like I
locked
didn't
out
want to
of-
make that decision without the whole building committee receiving that presentation. If we had to select a path that
Yeah, you
locked
are
us
not.
into a path.
You are not locked in.
So we just
Yeah.
have to say, go fill out a letter and make sure they know we want to do it.
Yep. So we tell them, yep, we want to go forward. The board wants to go forward and do path 2, and then they'll write up a MOU, memorandum of understanding, send that to you. You would sign it with them, and then they would take it from there.
And
as
there's
long
no
as
drawback to doing it, right?
no.
Yeah.
And
You-
Eric, the Eversource pays you to do the modeling on that?
No, so they have their own group of vendors. We are not one of them. So they have their own group of vendors they reach out to, and so they'll reach out to one of the, and we know all of them because we work with them, to do the energy model. And then again, if we sign up, the key is to sign up before the end of DD, because the cost share is 75% paid by Eversource, 25% paid by the owner.
So that's just for solar panels, though?
No, that's just for energy modeling for the project. This is for utility rebate money to make the building more efficient than code, and however much more efficient we make it, you get more money.
Okay.
And
But
you
the
will-
money we get back from Eversource would probably come back and it would go to the town. It wouldn't go against this project, right?
There
Check
are
was
a variety of conversations going on now at the utility level, at the OSCGR level. There's a little bit of a different message being told to us by whichever of those parties speaks to us. But the intent that was expressed by OSCGR is they understand that the fact that the traditional route that the state has taken, where if you're getting $100,000 back from a utility, they look at that as other funding and they take the total price of the project, take $100,000 off the top, and then give you the percentage of what's left. They understand that that's been a disincentive to districts to put in the effort in order to pursue that path to greater energy savings. So they are working on a structural change that will allow you to keep some, most, all, I don't know what it's going to turn out to be, but to enhance the likelihood that people will go through the effort by giving more of that rebate to the owner.
So our risk, if we don't get them, if the state moves in a path where they're not giving back that money, the risk is the 25% of the energy modeling.
You would spend that 25% of the energy model, but if you get, let's use the mythical $100,000.
Yeah.
At your current reimbursement rate, 60,000 of that, even if you take it off the face of the project, the town would have been paying 60,000 of that 100 anyway. So in essence, you're getting your share of the rebate, and the state is getting their share of the rebate. I think what they're trying to do is give the town the entire rebate. So you'd still get some monetary benefit out of it, even though you are upfronting the cost of the energy model by that 25%.
And just for rough numbers, the total cost of the energy model is anywhere from $20,000 to $35,000, and so round numbers, your share of it at 25%, it's like
Less than
10 grand.
Yeah.
Okay.
The issue is, like Jack's saying, on the back end, when you get your rebate, which is likely going to be 6 figures of some kind, the state takes that off the top. And Eversource talked about they have, if the state doesn't officially change their language on this, they have ways that they can, in theory, circumvent it.
So
Where
instead of,
they might credit your bills.
Your utility, right?
Like,
So instead of
until you
giving
get to that point, so you
right.
basically get 3 months free of electricity until
Until
you
the
get there.
auditors get it.
Right.
They-
So
Yeah.
it gets back to the town one way or the other, but it may not actually impact the project
Yeah.
directly.
Yeah, Eversource is trying to work around it, but again, the state will do what they do.
Yeah.
So Jack, at the state level, are they also having similar conversations in regards to this Inflation Reduction Act credits? Because if you read the Inflation Reduction Act, the federal government is suggesting that the design engineers who would get the tax incentive, filter that to the schools. But is that realistic in how
I
this
think there are
funneling of money would happen?
There's so
or-
many layers that would be considered in that it really kind of overcomplicates the grant funding conversation at this point. Maybe some clarity before the project is over, maybe some clarity will occur to where we might find that there's a path that we can benefit from that. But at this point, you know, our lion's share of outside funding is coming from, you know, the school construction grant, and I think that's what we should count on, and these other things would be, you know, icing on the cake if they happen.
Okay. I think, I was gonna say, I think it would be beneficial, and the committee can decide if somebody from the team can walk the whole committee through those Eversource options. I thought it was good information. I think it's good to keep in the back of our mind as we're making decisions, but obviously I'll leave that up to you as the chair and the committee.
It's kind of getting late for tonight.
No,
but-
no, I'm not saying for tonight. We can table it for another time.
Yeah, we can walk through it next time, but I think we should give CES direction on if we want them to write the letter before the end of, when's development design end?
2 weeks.
Yeah, we need to give them.
To
It's
come
at
to
the end of the
consensus,
estimate
yes, we
period
want
is the end
to,
of
we
the
want
year.
Eversource's money, which, again, isn't really free money. Anyone who pays an electric bill or a gas bill in the state is contributing a little bit per every unit into this energy savings fund. Now you're just expressing your interest to get your share of it back.
Yeah. Does anyone object to it? Okay. All right.
the letter.
There you go. Can you just send me a note when it's sent off to them, Eric?
I mean, I just email them and say,
Yeah.
we spoke, they want to go forward.
Yeah,
Option
okay.
2, they write the letter, send it to us, and then you review it and sign it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So you sign this understanding with them that, yes, we're going to go forward and do this, and then
Okay.
that releases them to engage their energy modeler and start that whole process
Okay.
and start the ball rolling.
Thank you.
And then you're kind of locked into that cost share 75-25, and then the whole process runs.
Okay.
So do we need to have a motion to do that? Because it's going to cost us 10-ish K.
We have to pay for the model no matter what, right? That's part of this whole project.
You don't have to pay for the model
Oh, okay.
for rebates, no.
No, I mean, as part of the project, would we need to know what that model looked like anyway?
Yeah, so we have within our scope of services to do kind of a code compliance model. It's a different type of model than, the Eversource model is much more detailed and scrutinized.
Okay. So it's an addition to scope
Yes.
then? Yes, we do need to vote. Okay. So I'll take a motion to approve
To participate in the Eversource rebate program, which includes a partial payment for an energy model.
Thank you, that.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Jack, as always.
Okay, shifting gears
Yes.
into the Arcadis report, which I will not put the slides up tonight because basically, who needs to see a spreadsheet that says the same thing as 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
We've got a little further expenditures in the last increment as bills have been paid, but there are no major shifts of funds among accounts or among line items in the account. The Newfield contract is in the town manager's office for signature, which I anticipate should come as early as tomorrow, and then we can consider that deal consummated and everything has been agreed to. We had a little back and forth about some of the terminology, which was a very cooperative exchange between the town's lawyer and Newfield, and I think that we've added some clarifications where things might not have seemed as clear as when the first pass through the lawyer. I think everybody understands what we're after, and ink is flowing, which is good.
And Brian, are you going to be our main contact? Like, are you going to be representing Newfield? Like, are you the guy?
Yeah, I'll stay engaged pretty much throughout the entire project. Tom DeMoro, who you met as well during the interview. Tom's out right now. He's participating remotely, but he'll get re-engaged probably sometime in March.
So he's
as
like
well.
the project manager or whatever?
Tom's really our
manager.
pre-construction manager.
So
All right.
he just goes through pre-construction or after?
Yeah, I mean, Tom, it's near and dear to him. He's going to stay involved throughout the life cycle of the project, but his main focus is to get it off the ground for you and out to bid.
Okay.
And then once the scopes are written, the trades are engaged, he turns it over to our construction department. So,
And then there'll be a different person
yeah, Matt Glazer, who was our senior project manager, he's going to be assigned to this job as well. So once you get rolling and you're having routine meetings, and Perkins can, I'm sure, thankfully drop off, and maybe only one or two of them are here,
Yeah.
we'll become the heavy, and you'll see Matt all the time. You'll see me in and out as needed, but it'll be the same people.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Sorry.
It's okay.
Jack, go ahead.
That's okay. We'll talk about financial status. No change in accounts, just paying bills as they come through. And then, speaking of paying bills, tonight, to make things simple, Emily says, here are hard copies for everybody, which I think was the right thing to do. So we don't have an awful lot in front of you tonight.
She didn't give the thing I needed to sign, did she?
She did not give me copies of that,
Okay.
but
Sorry, she can email.
we'll deal with that starting tomorrow. So we've got invoice from Perkins Eastman, split between the middle school and central admin per their contract. The total value is $245,635.20. And that is the only invoice for action tonight. And that brings us to
Second.
45%.
All in
through
favor, say
design
aye. All opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carries, and we approve that invoice, so.
Okay.
Just have Emily send me the form and I'll fill it out.
I will. And one other financial item is that we did receive, as a follow-up to our conversation with OSCGR, they did ask that we give them a side-by-side comparison. And I received from Newfield today, based on information, the pre-ref information from Tom Harden from PAX, and then working through our numbers here after design development. It's a side-by-side of what we estimated at schematics, what was in the grant application, the variance, and then it talks about the escalation rate.
Okay.
So we'll be providing that to OSCG.
And that's in the format they are looking for?
Yes, it follows their estimating format that is used when the grant is filed. We get a little bit more detailed with the subsequent following estimate filings as the job progresses into construction documents, but we're going back to the simple version at grant stage, so it's line by line, apples to apples.
So moving forward, though, what would they want to see? Would they want to see the same format if we still have increases?
Ultimately, the conversation is going to continue until the bids come in,
Okay.
and ultimately we'll come back to them with the number that we go to referendum with, saying we need the price to go from X to Y.
So I'm saying the next cost
I don't know.
estimate.
I don't know whether they're going to want this
Oh.
side by side continually through all the development phases, all the estimates, but at least for them to help clarify their understanding of where we are today, which I thought we covered pretty thoroughly in the schematic design
Okay.
review meeting with them last week. But this was their one ask coming out of that meeting. They wanted it by the end of the week, and they'll have it by tomorrow morning.
Okay, and then last question I
Will
have
you-
for you.
Oh, sorry. I was like, will you provide it to the committee as well?
Sure.
Last question I have for you. Have you spoken to Doug? Any updates on the whole Reno new conversation?
We have not gotten an invite yet to that conversation.
Can we invite ourselves to that conversation?
Well, we got to kind of catch everybody in the room at the same time, so.
Okay.
But he said he'd have Angela reach out to me to schedule something, but
Okay.
haven't heard from them yet.
All right. And then for waivers, do we need to start that space waiver?
Space waiver, I think once we have the ed spec consummated, the amendment is approved by the Board of Ed, that is the document that we will use to start that conversation about a
Okay.
space waiver.
All right.
Because that'll document the fact, yes, this is a part of the project and why.
Okay. Okay. All right. Anything else for Jack?
Yeah, one quick question on the schedule. Should we be factoring in referendum time? Because right now I'm looking at, we go to bid and then we start construction of the building the next day. Like
From your lips to God's ears.
Yeah.
Right now, coming out of last week's town council meeting,
Yeah.
the council was clear, we need better data, which we'll get with the more detailed documents of design development.
Yep.
So they chose to take no action to critique the process until we get that data in hand. We will be going back to the town council with the design development estimate results. I don't know what that conversation is going to look like. They may take a strategic pause and tell us not to proceed into construction documents right away until they get their head wrapped around the number. They might say proceed through CDs and bidding, so we know what the real number is. We just don't know that yet.
Okay.
So
I'm just-
both of
just-
which could impact
Yeah,
the
like
start of
a
construction.
couple options,
Yeah.
it could go a couple different ways. How would that look, when you overlay it on the schedule? So nothing formal, but just what could happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
With a couple of recent projects, we had towns that passed the increment and then construction was able to begin, and we haven't gotten the state's participation on that increment yet. I'm hoping that they'll do that here, that once the town looks at it, that even prior to the referendum vote, that they may allow us to break ground. But again, that's a conversation that will be easier to have when we have better data in a month from now.
Okay, any other comments?
Were there any other key findings or anything to share from the OSCG in our schematic design review from last week?
Nothing
Or the
really
broad committee?
remarkable. It was pretty straightforward.
You just
Like,
took the one action about the comparison, right?
Yeah. At schematic level, it's usually fairly plain vanilla, but,
Yeah, and then I
all the
just had a
ducks in a
note
row.
from that meeting. They had a question about the utility lines being prepared to support as a question as well.
There is a question on their form, are you basically using the same utilities you have now or bringing in new ones?
Yeah.
And it's the fact that we're building one while the other one still operates and the new one has slightly different demands. We know we have to bring in a new electrical service. Whether water and sewer, I think we heard the water line needs to be replaced anyway. So that has, because based on condition, that has to be a new line.
Okay.
So
And that's
it's
all
not-
taking place on site?
Ultimately, there will be some connection in the street, and that little increment is not reimbursed by the state, but otherwise, it's funded through the project.
Okay.
Ken?
And then in terms of other timing, you said we'll know more in a month, but we're gonna rent and design development on the 3rd of March. That estimate process is gonna probably not be ready.
Estimates
for-
take a couple of weeks to
Oh,
process,
just 2 weeks,
so
okay.
we can have the raw data, a couple of weeks after the estimators get their hands on the information. Then, of course, the reconciliation process. So,
Yeah, I was just thinking with what we were gonna plan to do for the community update, whether ideally we'd have time to kind of digest and
Well,
maybe
this,
repackage
yeah, I
that
mean, this would be
data.
a
Well,
schematic design. It's going to be focused on the schematic
It will
design
be?
and what we
Okay.
know,
Yeah.
in this moment in time.
Okay.
I think we might want to consider doing another one after design development, but
Yeah.
it just got pushed out because of,
Right,
you know,
yeah. No, that's what I was just thinking, like, it wouldn't be
But
time
otherwise, I
to
feel
start
like-
updating materials in time or anything.
Yeah, and
so,
I feel like
yeah.
otherwise we're just going to get into the cycle of like pushing out, and I think it'll be good to get that feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Get that update out.
Yeah, no, I just want to know what expectations were. Okay.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think we are going to have to set some expectations about, design is continually evolving and, that.
Ken Jackson, you've been so patient.
There was a discussion a while back about builder's risk insurance and the requirement for the existing middle school throughout the course of this project. Has anybody approached the town on asking that question to our insurance carrier? Because there is a cost associated with that, and it's normally put on the project.
builder's risk for the existing school?
Like if you damage it or something.
I think conversations that Sharon has had with Kerma, now they understand that the building will be built immediately adjacent to the existing. So they're aware of the conditions of the project, and we've already gotten some quotes from them so that Emily can work that into the budget. So I think that should be under control already.
Okay, it's not a huge expense, but it's an expense to the project, so we just want to know what that number is before it slips through the crack.
Yep. Sharon has quotes, and I'm presuming that conversations, we're clear that we're building right next door to the existing. So if there is a cost, it should be factored in that quote.
Any other comments before we adjourn? You can keep going all night if you want. Okay. Meeting adjourned. Have a good night. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.